Waheshimiwa, na tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, tunakusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Tunakuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao wamezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Honorable members, we have quorum to transact business.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable members, there's a petition regarding the completion of house units for Kibra residents funded by the World Bank. Honorable members, as you know, Article 119 of the Constitution gives right to any person to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority. Further, Standing Order 2252B requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. In that regard, I wish to report to the House that I have received a petition from Mr. Peter Uhuru, being the chairperson of the Ngando PAP's Housing Cooperative Society Limited. In the petition and 560 other members of the cooperative society are residents of Soweto, Line Saba and Mashimone areas of Kibra constituency and Langata constituency, who are awaiting to be allocated the housing units under construction on the land in Jamhuri area, specifically Ngando area near Station Road in Kibra. This project is part of the relocation action plan by the Minister of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works and Kenya Railways Corporation, financed by the World Bank. The objective of the project was to relocate persons living near the rail line operating area whose continued stay posed a safety risk to the operations of the railway. Honorable members, the petitioners claim to be the intended beneficiaries of the project and were supposed to receive their units 7 years ago, a dream which has not been realized. The petitioners also note that Kenya Railways Corporation had resettled similar affected persons in Mukuru, Soweto, Line Saba and Mashimone areas. However, the 560 affected persons who are members of Ngando PAP's Housing Cooperative Society had missed out since their housing units are incomplete to date. Further, the petitioners aver that they have complied with all conditions given and that their houses were even demolished with a promise of alternative housing in the new project. Honorable members, the petitioners state that their engagement with the Kenya Railways Corporation to revive the stalled project has borne no fruit, as the corporation insists it has not yet received funds from the government to facilitate completion. Further, the petitioners continue receiving reminders from Kenya Railways Corporation to comply with the rental payments for the stalled units. Honorable members, the petitioners pray that the National Assembly intervenes on their behalf to ensure that the Kenya Railways Corporation expedites the completion of the housing units and settle the intended beneficiaries who are currently residing in deplorable makeshift shelters as per the agreement at inception of the project. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, I direct that the petition be committed to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration in accordance with the provision of Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and the petitioners in accordance with the Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Order, honorable members who are holding a kamkunja at the bar. Can you take your seats? Yes, can you give the microphone to Honorable Mboko Milemba? Instead, you have given to Oenbai.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was really inquiring if you could have allowed some small comments on that particular petition, Honorable Speaker, because I have a relevant issue in my own constituency, and if you permit, then I would proceed to weigh in a little on the petition. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, Honorable Mboko Milemba, I accede to your request. I'll give 30 minutes for anybody who wants to make comments on that petition, starting with yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me...
And the screen is full as usual. Must have been full from 1 o'clock. And I'm sure it's not full for this petition.
Yeah.
So those who want to speak to the petition, go to intervention.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me take this opportunity to thank Peter Kinyua for this petition for the people of Kibra, and he says there are about 560 of them who are displaced by railway, and with a promissory note that then they will be receiving or getting houses thereafter. It is important that as the Kenya Kwanza government, we are committed really to the issue of housing, that the relevant committee goes straight to look at how this team can get their houses. Honorable Speaker, back in Emuhaya, which is my constituency, equally Kenya Railway displaced so many people from the areas of Ipali, Tumbu, and the areas of Mungoe. And those people had been living on the railway for the longest period of time. Those were their homes. But to date, they have not been resettled anywhere. So as the committee looks at this, I would wish that you possibly comprehensively look at what damage the Kenya Railways may have done to families that were living along the railway with a promissory note that they'll be resettled. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Didimas. You take 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this matter, and I support this petition. The petitioner raises pertinent issues. In this country, Honorable Speaker, the beneficiaries, the intended beneficiaries, are usually never the beneficiary. And what the petitioner is seeking is that those that were intended to benefit from those housing projects were the people who are living along that railway line that were displaced. So the committee must ensure that every time the government or the development partner funds the development must benefit the intended beneficiaries. Honorable Speaker, if there are people who are living in those houses that were not part of the original beneficiaries, they should be removed and the intended beneficiaries given an opportunity to occupy those houses. Honorable Speaker, I support this petition and I hope that the committee will expedite and finish up this petition so that the intended beneficiaries who have been disadvantaged actually comes back and occupies those houses. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I support the petition.
The Honorable Beatrice Adagala. If you want to speak to this petition, go to intervention.
Can you continue? Get the microphone away.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Switch off the microphone of the Honorable Didimas. Adagala, proceed. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to give my voice on this petition, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to say that this petitioner is right at the moment, because most of the people, Mr. Speaker, who are living on along the railway line were the bona fide people who are supposed to be given those houses, Mr. Speaker, sir. Therefore, if many people who have been given are not the bona fide people who are staying there, you'll find the people who are living in Kileleshu are the ones who have been given those houses, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want this honorable parliament to ensure that the rightful people who are members who are staying in that Kibra along the railway line should be given those houses. And the way Honorable Mboko has said, the people of Bunyore who suffered eviction because of the railway line, Mr. Speaker, sir, through this petition, I would ask also those people to be compensated and be given funds for the land that was taken, and the rightful people of Kibra should be given those houses, Mr. Speaker, sir. Instead of the people of Kileleshwa, people living in Daiga going to own those houses, and they charge them highly, they pay rent highly. As per the bottom-up economy that is on now, those people should be given first priority, and they be given those houses, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this chance, and I congratulate you for being given this chance as our Speaker in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Anthony Olwoch.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to support and congratulate the member of the public who has put up this petition. And I want to ask the committee, as you look at this petition, let us also ask the relevant minister in charge of this State Department on Housing to share with this committee and therefore with the House the comprehensive policy of the Kenya Kwanza government on the question of housing, so that we interact not only with the piecemeal launching of housing as has been seen in Langata, in Kibra. Madare constituency as it is also very ripe for the question of housing. And even as we support the government on this question, it is important that we consume holistically the intention and the approaches that this government will do, so that not only the people of Kibra, the ones who are living at the railways and the ones in Emuhaya and countrywide, but everybody who is supposed to benefit on the question of low-cost housing is able to be comprehensively addressed as we come up with the report for this committee. Thank you.
Honorable Alpha Miruka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also stand to support the petition. The petitioner has a very good idea, because you see in Kibra you find most people who are benefited, that they are not the real beneficiaries. We support the petition, and I wish that the committee should stand tall and make recommendable policies that will make sure that the rightful people who are supposed to benefit, the right things, should benefit. Otherwise, I support the petition fully.
The Honorable Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support this petition. And Mr. Speaker, just to ask the committee to look at two things. Number one, we want to know those who are asking for compensations. Are they the tenants or are they the landlords who decided to ask for this petition? And I'm hoping those who are going to be compensated must be the tenants. They are the ones who are living there, not the landlord. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we also want to know how many units have been built and how many of the citizens of Kibra who are supposed to be compensated and to be given these houses are they, so that we don't go into a process and then find that very few of them will be the beneficiaries. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping within the housing project that we have all over Nairobi, that we are able to look at everything and to ensure that those who deserve these affordable houses are able to be given. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Elachi. The Honorable James Gakuya. It has no sound? Use the next one.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for having this opportunity to also rise to support the petition on the floor. Mr. Speaker, having been a member from this locality of Nairobi County, I have a big knowledge that there was that serious demolition of those occupants which are along the railways. And Mr. Speaker, as I support that the original beneficiaries of these particular houses along Kibra, I would also want to put my voice that other areas were equally beneficiaries like Makandala and elsewhere. But this particular project did never consider holistic areas where this demolition took place. Area like Dandora was affected on a very serious demolition of those houses along there. And I urge that the committee that will take charge on this petition, they also go a wider space to check on those other areas that were not considered to have those houses. I also want to raise my voice that there was an audit that was done before the construction of this house, and that list is there, and therefore I urge that the committee should sort for the original list so that the beneficiaries can be clearly known. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Thank you. The Honorable Patrick Makau. The Honorable Patrick Makau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chance?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this chance. The petitioner is very right. Mr. Speaker, Mavoko happens to be one of the beneficiaries of those housing schemes. And Mr. Speaker, yes, I agree. If there are housing schemes that are meant for the poor, let them be for the poor. Mr. Speaker, a case in point is in Mavoko, Mulolongo Phase 3, where the government partnered with the UN Habitat. And Mr. Speaker, to my surprise, when those houses were complete, I saw adverts asking for government scale 10 to 15 to apply for the houses, yet they were built for the informal sector of Mavoko. Mr. Speaker, so I know the pain of this petitioner. When houses are built meant for a certain class of people, let them be the beneficiaries and those that are able. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying shame on you, because shame on them, because Mr. Speaker.
Shame on the Speaker?
No, shame on them. Shame on the, I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I mean shame on the people who are occupying those houses which are not meant for them. Mr. Speaker, anybody working in the government in a scale of grade K or grade 10 and above, Mr. Speaker, is able to buy their own houses. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is good for those houses go to the rightful people so that we can finish informal sectors. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition. Thank you very much.
Wangari, I'll have two more from one Wangari and one more and two more from this side.
Thank you.
Then we close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this petition and join my colleagues because the issue, especially of the displacements that occurred with Kenya Railways, were never resolved. Mr. Speaker, I remember I even requested a statement here in 12th Parliament of people who are displaced in Gilgil, in Kambi Somali, people who are paying rates and rent to the same government, and they were still displaced, Mr. Speaker, and there was no clear way of compensation. And some of these areas, Mr. Speaker, like the Gilgil area, there was some old buildings by the railways. Right now, they have leased them out to be hotels, Mr. Speaker, and not getting the rightful owners to actually be able to be compensated, who lost buildings, who lost businesses, even those who lost homes, Mr. Speaker, because what we saw that time was inhuman, and we have not gotten away in terms of the compensation, and they have been quiet about it, Mr. Speaker. So I hope that the committee that to deal with this issue can be able to holistically look at it to ensure that we have a lasting solution, that this does not happen again, Mr. Speaker. I thank you and I support.
Honorable Kogo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you for giving me a chance to add my voice to this matter. Constructions for helping poor always happen with the intention of upgrading their living standards. And the basic requirement for life is we need food, we need clothing, and we need shelter. And for the shelter that they are given, it is always taken by people who already have shelter. So I rise to support this matter, this petition that has been brought into the floor of this House. It needs to be expedited conclusively to the extent that those who have been displaced need to be compensated. It is across the country. There are also people who are living along the railway premises and railway areas, even in Kisumu, and they have these matters have never been resolved. Honorable Speaker, it needs to be looked at by the relevant committee and a report given back, but we have to have the intention of looking at poor people and upgrading them, Honorable Speaker. I thank you and I support.
The Honorable Tim Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to support this petition, Mr. Speaker, as a representative of the people of Nairobi, we know exactly what the people go through. Mr. Speaker, there are very high consultation around here. Very high consultation, Mr. Speaker. I can't even hear myself.
The Honorable Sabina Chege and group.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know people have been displaced, Mr. Speaker, for being removed from their residential areas so that they can upgrade the area. But immediately the houses are done, Mr. Speaker, those people are not given the right to own a house in that area. Somebody comes from nowhere and are given those houses. And this is, the World Bank has got a very clear policy on displaced people. When you displace people, you must provide a resettlement. And sometimes this is not given, and people are displaced, the houses are done, and immediately they are finished, some other people come and occupy them. So we support this petition, Mr. Speaker. I hope the committee will look into it and look holistically. with other areas which are affected within the city of Nairobi and other areas, Mr. Speaker. Thank you and support.
And lastly, the member for Kibra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance. I think it is my constituency which is most affected. I rise to support this petition. Now, when I saw this yesterday in this today's program, I went myself to look at these units which were started 7 years ago. Now, when these people were displaced from Line Saba, Soweto, and Lindi, they were promised that within 2 years they will have their houses. Now, up to now, I went there yesterday and about 560 are already almost complete. But the total units were about 900. Now, the other 360, they have not put up the roof. Now, what we are saying is that this is a project we should have ended long time ago. People are suffering, and the railways, they have started building the walls along the railway line where these people were displaced. They have no places to go. I also realized that there was a committee formed initially, the local committee, Mr. Speaker, sir, where the names of the people who are supposed to occupy those houses are. I am asking that the committee which is going to look into this matter incorporates also the member of parliament so that we give them the facts on the ground. But I realized that what was making the delay is that the contractor has not been paid the full amount. In our culture, when you lose a husband and somebody inherits your wife, he inherits with all the problems and all the good things. And now that the new government has inherited this, we ask them that they pay the contractor so that the people of Kibra can have a good place to live in. Otherwise, I support this motion. Thank you, sir, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Order, honorable members. Order. Order, the Honorable Mpuri Apuri. Take your seats. Honorable members, if you read your standing orders, a member is supposed to be on his feet, on her feet, either when he or she is in motion from one place to another, or when you are upstanding demanding a division, or when the speaker walks in or is walking out. But I see members standing on the same spot for up to 10 minutes, disrupting proceedings of the House. It's out of order to do that, honorable members. For new colleagues, acquaint yourselves with the standing orders so that you don't fall into the trap of misbehaving old members. Honorable members, we have a supplementary order paper. We'll go back to communication. I've got 2 communications to make. After the communications, we'll go on with the rest of the orders on the order paper, and I'll give direction as we go along. Honorable members, the first communication is on the approval of members for appointment to the Parliamentary Service Commission. Honorable members, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41, I wish to report to the House that I have received a message from the Senate regarding its decision on the approval of members for appointment to the Parliamentary Service Commission. The message conveys that on Wednesday, 9th November 2022, the Senate considered the motion on approval of members of the Parliamentary Service Commission and approved the motion with amendment to paragraph B by deleting the name of the Honorable Senator Fatuma Adan Dulo CBS MP and substituting thereof the name of Senator Eric Okongo Omogeni SCMP. Honorable members, You will recall that on Tuesday, 8th November 2022, this House approved the appointment of the following members to the Parliamentary Service Commission under subsections C1 of the Constitution: the Honorable Faith Gitao MP, the Honorable Mohammed Ali MP, the Honorable Senator Nderidu Kinyua MP, the Honorable Senator Joyce Korir MP. B, under subsection C2 of the Constitution, the Honorable Mishi Juma Hamisi Mbogo MP, the Honorable Kingola Patrick Makau MP, the Honorable Senator Fatuma Adan Dulo CBS MP. Honorable members, I did convey the aforementioned resolution to the National Assembly to the Senate for its consideration. Of the 7 names transmitted by the National Assembly, the Senate approved 6. The Senate also substituted the name of the Honorable Fatuma Adan Dulo, CBS MP, with that of Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, SCMP. The decision of the Senate is therefore at variance with that of the National Assembly to the extent that one of the members contained in the message. This therefore requires me as your Speaker to guide the House on the implications of this variance. Honorable members, there is an established parliamentary practice whereby camera approval of an appointment is only construed to have been granted if both houses unequivocally approve a nominee. Consequently, the decision by the Senate implies that 1, both houses of parliament have unequivocally approved the appointment of 6 out of 7 members to the Parliamentary Service Commission. 2, the appointment of the Honorable Senator Fatuma Adan Dulo CBS MP as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission stands rejected, as the nominee only obtained the approval of 1 house. Honorable members, what does this portend? As you are aware, the matter at hand is not subject to the mediation process contained in Article 113 of the Constitution. This is because approval of a person for appointment to office by Parliament is distinct from the process of lawmaking. Honorable members, on a matter related to this, I wish to also inform the House that I have received a letter this morning from the parliamentary leadership of the Jubilee Party related to this message. In the letter, the leadership of the Jubilee Party alludes to the entitlement of one of its members to a slot in the Commission on account of an agreement with its coalition partners in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. Honorable members, this claim by the Jubilee Party is not new. Indeed, in the 12th Parliament, my predecessor resolved a similar issue raised by the Wiper Democratic Movement by perusing the coalition agreement entered into by the partners in the NASA coalition. The NASA coalition agreement did expressly provide for the sharing of positions in the Commission on constituent party strength in the Parliament, and that allowed the consideration of the Honorable Ben Momanyi for appointment to the Commission. Honorable members, the present claim is unique for 2 reasons. First, you will recall that in providing guidance on the issue that arose early on the leadership of the majority and minority in the House, I did rule that the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition agreement conveyed to this House by the Registrar of Political Parties and the Honorable Junet Mohammed was inadmissible. Secondly, honorable members, unlike the case in the 12th Parliament where the Wiper Democratic Movement raised the issue of the entitlement positions in the Commission before a vote had been taken by the House, the Jubilee Party has made its claim after the House has unequivocally pronounced itself on the matter. Honorable members, I've taken the liberty to peruse the Azimio la Umoja One coalition agreement, faulty as it may be, to help me navigate this issue. I have noted that the agreement makes absolutely no mention of the sharing of positions in the Commission. That alone deals a fatal blow to the claims made by the Jubilee party. When added to the fact that the claim is made after the House has voted on the matter, it becomes rather clear that the horse has already bolted and the stables are closed. No amount of sympathy that I may have for the plight in which the Jubilee party finds itself would allow me to arbitrate on this matter, as my hands are tied by the law and the procedure of this House. Honourable members, with respect to the Senate approval of the Honourable Eric Okongo Omogeni, SCMP, it is notable that in accordance with the law and established practice, the approval requires a concurrent decision of this House. The decision therefore lies with you as to who the House wants to represent in the Commission. It has to be unequivocal. Honourable members, as the chair of the Commission, I have noted and severally expressed the urgent need to fully constitute the Commission. This view has also been echoed by the House Business Committee. There are myriad matters pending before the Commission relating to welfare of members. These include consultations with SRC over members' welfare matters. Additionally, commissioners sit on key committees such as members' mortgage and car loan committees where there are numerous pending requests. Additionally, members, the Commission lacks a significant portion of its membership currently. Some commissioners who are members were not re-elected, and there is currently a vacancy with regard to one representative of the public. I will discourage any further delay in the formation of the Commission. Honourable members, for these reasons, and as required by Standing Order 41 and 42, when I received this message, I instructed the clerk of the National Assembly to publish a supplementary order paper for the sitting of the House today, Thursday, 10th November 2022, in order for the House to consider and make an unequivocal decision on the appointment of Senator Eric Okongo Omogeni, SCMP, as a member of the Parliamentary Service Commission. I'll therefore draw your attention to the supplementary order paper which is now in circulation. It is my hope that the House will conclude this business today and pave the way for the constitution of the Commission in full and commencement of its work that is urgent and waiting. The House is accordingly guided. I thank you. There's no matter before the House to put the question. Honourable members, there is a second communication. This is a communication on the substitution of nominee for appointment as the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Correctional Services. Honourable members, Standing Order 42.1 relating to messages from the President provides that the Speaker shall read to the House any message from the President delivered to the Speaker for communication to the House. Can the honourable members take their seats? Take the nearest seat available. You don't have to walk to where you ordinarily sit. Jane Kihara, or is it who? Take the nearest available seat. Honourable members, I want to repeat what I said earlier. When the chair extends a courtesy to you to take the seat, take the nearest available seat. And you can see that many seats that are unoccupied behind there so that we don't disrupt business for long. Honourable members, I was saying in this regard, I wish to convey the following message from His Excellency the President regarding the substitution of a certain nominee for appointment as a Principal Secretary. In the message, His Excellency the President conveys that in exercise of powers conferred on him by Article 155(3) of the Constitution as read together with Section 3 and 5 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, he has nominated Ms. Mary Muthoni Muriuki for appointment as Principal Secretary for the State Department of Correctional Services. He indicates that this is due to Ms. Caroline Nyawira Morage withdrawing her candidature for the position. Honourable members, His Excellency the President now seeks the approval of the nominee by the National Assembly for appointment to the said position, and further requests for her consideration to be undertaken on a priority basis. Honorable members, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 42.3, I hereby refer the message together with the curriculum vitae of the nominee, the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs for consideration. Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act provides that unless otherwise provided in law, the committee to which such nomination is referred shall consider the matter and table a report in the House within 28 days. Honorable members, for clarity and to enable the House conclude this exercise speedily, I direct the Clerk of the National Assembly to take the necessary action by notifying the nominee and the general public by placing an advert in the daily newspapers of national circulation on the parliamentary website of the time and place of holding the approval hearings tomorrow, Friday, 11th November 2022, following which the approval hearings should commence. Thereafter, the said committee should take its report in the House on or before Tuesday, 29 November 2022, for the House to debate and make a decision on the nominee before the House proceeds on its long recess on 1st December 2022. Thank you. Order. Yes, Junet, what is it?
Mr. Speaker, no, I am not standing to debate your communication, but I just want to say that the new communication as a member of Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to stand here to sympathize and empathize with my brother GK.
Order, Honorable Junet, you are total out of order. Under what standing order do you extend sympathy and empathy to any member?
Order number 5, papers.
Do we have any papers? Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Members must always appreciate the Honorable Junet occasionally wants to entertain the House, especially on Thursday evenings, and welcome that. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, November 10th, 2022. The fourth batch of nominees to 43 NGCDF committees from the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board for the following constituencies: Aina Bkoi, Aina Moi, Aldai, Awendo, Bobasi, Bonchari, Bureti, Central Imenti, Chesumei, Dagoretti North, Galole, Garsen, Gatundu South, Gishugu, Homa Bay Town, Igembe South, Kajiado South, Kamukunji, Kagundo, Kasarani, Keyo North, Kilome, Konoin, Kuria East, Kwanza, Lafey, Likoni, Loima, Mavoko, Moiben, Mwatate, Kuru Town East, Ndiwa, Nyali, Nyaribari, Masaba, Rango, Ruaraka, Sigowet, Soin, South Mugirango, Suba South, Suna West, Turkana East, and Voi. A revised list of nominees for Laikipia East constituency from the National Government Development Fund Board. The legal notice number 203 of 2022 relating to the adjustment of specific rates of export levy 2022 regulation 2022, and the explanatory memorandum from the Kenya Revenue Authority. And lastly, legal notice number 204 of 2022 relating to the adjustment of rates of excise duty regulation 2022, and the explanatory memorandum from the Kenya Revenue Authority. 4, report of the Auditor General and financial statements for the National Youth Service for the financial year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. 5, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements of the Private Security Regulatory Authority for the 15 months financial year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. 6, report of the Auditor General and the financial statements of the following institutions for the financial year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. 1, Egerton University Investment Company, Kieni Technical Vocational College, Kenya Academy of Sports, Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, Auctioneers Licensing Board, Tanadi Waterworks Development Agency, National Authority for Campaigns Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, NACADA, National Authority for Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse Staff Mortgage and Car Loans Fund, Non-Governmental Organizations Coordination Board, Kenya Meat Commission, Sports Kenya, Kenya National Library Service, Ndia Technical and Vocational College, and Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, the Honorable Wandai.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much and for the indulgence. And I think this is the right point for me to raise this equally important matter. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that we have had endless debates on the matter of NGCDF while appreciating the fact that we are currently at the stage of engagement on some bill which is being proposed. Mr. Speaker, it is on record, and it is indeed true, that this is the first time, at least since 2013 when I joined this House, that we are getting into the tail end of the second quarter of a financial year. Honorable members, kindly pay me attention. This is the first time since 2013, when I first joined this House, that we are getting into the tail end of the second quarter of the financial year, when there is no single disbursement of NGCDF funds to the constituency accounts. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising this matter because, without necessarily anticipating debate, we are soon going on a long recess, which will only end sometime in February or March next year. February 13th. Mr. Speaker, going by past precedents, if this House adjourns for recess without a clear indication as to when disbursements of NGCDF will be made, we stand the risk of staying all the way up to the last quarter of this financial year without any single amount of money being disbursed. And yet, as we speak, nobody has told us why no money is being disbursed. Previously, we are made to believe that it was the previous or the former cabinet secretary who was adamant. But since this House approved the appointment of the substantive cabinet secretary, that's Professor Njuguna Ndungu, would I be in order, Mr. Speaker? Therefore, because we know the committee, the relevant committee, is still at its formative stages, would I be in order to ask you, Mr. Speaker, that this matter be directed to the leader of majority, that he engages with the executive, and in particular the cabinet secretary responsible for national treasury, by next week at the very latest, to make an equivocal undertaking as to when the first disbursements of the NGCDF funds are going to hit the accounts of the respective constituencies. And may I also dare say, Mr. Speaker, and this is no empty threat, that failure to do that, I will be moving members of the House to refrain from any talk of recess, firstly, and secondly, to refrain from any engagement on any business, not until and unless NGCDF funds are disbursed. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I will be seeking your guidance on this matter, and indeed asking you to make give a direction to the relevant cabinet secretary to take it upon himself that these NGCDF funds are disbursed without any further delay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Majority Leader, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I just want to associate myself with the sentiments of the Leader of Minority. that matters to do with CDF, Honorable Speaker, and the National Government Action Fund, which is ably patronized by our county MPs, Honorable Speaker, are matters that are very sensitive, not to members of parliament, but to the people that we sit here to represent. And there is nobody in the executive who should imagine that you are doing any member of parliament any favor by disbursing CDF. CDF funds are funds that are going directly to the people. Our people are waiting for us not to go on recess. They are waiting for us to go home to process their bursaries for term 1 school fees in January. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I want to also express my concern. And I know there could be many excuses, not reasons, part of which relates to the papers I've just laid. And I want to ask all of us to expedite with the issue of, together with your fund managers, the issue of constituting your CDF, NGCDF committees at the constituency level, so that nobody uses that as an excuse not to disburse money. And in any case, Honorable Speaker, NGCDF is not disbursed to the committee. It is disbursed to the fund manager. The fund manager is an employee of the board, which is an extension of the National Treasury. So there's absolutely no reason why the National Treasury should not be disbursing our CDF. And I will indeed, as soon as, before even the House rises, I will engage with the Cabinet Secretary so that before we even consider breaking for recess, we have both NGCDF and GAF and all other monies, even those that pertain to our county governments, being disbursed to our county so that government may start functioning in earnest, including NGCDF and all the other affirmative funds. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Majority Leader, I will give you an opportunity, perhaps together with the Chair of Budget and Finance, to engage the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, and I'll give you an opportunity on Tuesday afternoon to make a formal statement out of that engagement so that you can be able to guide the House accordingly. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Speaker, I wish to give the following notice of motion, that noting the resolution of Senate of Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, regarding its partial concurrence on the appointment of members of Parliament to the Parliamentary Service Commission, notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order 49 and pursuant to the provisions of Article 1272 of the Constitution, this House approves the appointment of the Honorable Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Council MP, to the Parliamentary Service Commission under subsection C2 of the said article. Thank you. That is the notice, honorable members. The motion will come.
Order. Honorable Musa Sirma, did you have a notice of motion or a paper to lay?
On CDF.
What do you have?
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, November 10th.
We go back to order number 5.
Wow.
Okay, go ahead.
It is, okay, report on the Select Committee on National Government Constituency Development Fund on list of nominees to the National Government Constituencies Development Fund for 124 constituencies.
Thank you.
Yes. The notice of motion.
Do you have a notice of motion as well?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, approval of nominees to the various Constituency Development Fund committees. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That pursuant to provisions of Section 43(4) of the National Government Constituency Development Fund, Act 2015, and paragraphs 5(2) and 10 of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund Regulations 2016, this House approves the list of nominees for appointment for the following 124 constituencies, committees of the National Government Constituency Development Fund, laid on the table of the House today, Thursday, November 10th, 2022. The list of, yes, as attached. They are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sirma. Next.
Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8.
Yes, the Honorable Chepkonga.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable Chepkonga.
Mr. Speaker, I
hold
raise
your horses, Honorable Chepkonga.
Yeah.
The leader of majority, don't you have a normal statement of Thursday on the business of the following week?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was standing up, then the clerk moved away. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44.2a, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Tuesday, 8th November 2022, to prioritize the business for consideration during the week. Honorable Speaker, on Tuesday, the House expects to undertake the first reading of the following bills: the Political Parties Amendment Bill of 2022, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill 2022, and 3, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill 2022. The House will also consider motions on approval of nominees to various National Government Constituency Development Fund committees and tree planting along roadsides and road reserves, should it not be concluded today. Honorable Speaker, next week, the departmental committees will be conducting the vetting of various principal secretary nominees. Additionally, the House is also expected to undertake the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly, EALA. I therefore want to urge members to be diligent and avail themselves to ensure that there is sufficient quorum both in the committees and in the House to conclude all urgent business within the set timelines. And that is most, or especially with the vetting of principal secretaries and the election of EALA members. Honorable Speaker, members will recall that this week the House has been considering the legislative proposal on the National Government Constituency Development Fund, the appointment of members to the Parliamentary Service Commission, as well as approving some changes to committee membership that were occasioned by the outcome of elections of chairpersons and their vice chairpersons, amongst other matters. In this regard, I would like to extend my gratitude to all members for their dedication and active participation in this process to elect the leadership within our committees, and plead with the members of the House to work with the elected leadership. Honorable Speaker, now that the committees are fully constituted and in place, I encourage them to robustly undertake their oversight, legislative and representative roles in earnest and serve the people of Kenya, whom we represent here. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee will reconvene on Tuesday, 15 November 2022 to schedule business for the coming week. I now wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable members, before we go to the next order, allow me to acknowledge the following schools in the public gallery. Students from Alliance High School, Kikuyu, Kiambu. Students from Riverbank Academy, Starehe, Nairobi. Students from Tharaka Boys, from Tharaka, Nithi. And students from Kiboko Primary School in Kibwezi, Makwiny. On your behalf and my behalf, I extend a most hearty welcome to them to the House of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 83, as read together with Standing Order number 1, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while considering a number of regulations that were referred to the Committee on Delegated Legislation in the last 2 meetings, Mr. Speaker, we were faced with a lacuna in which there are certain, what was brought before the committee, Mr. Speaker, is that there are certain regulations that have been made by certain statutory bodies or persons that are authorized to make regulations, but they have not brought them to the House, Mr. Speaker. We looked at the Statutory Instruments Act, and we found that the committee can only consider only regulations that have been tabled before this House and referred to the committee, Mr. Speaker. Now, we made an attempt of trying to find out what do we do with these regulations, Mr. Speaker. And we came to the conclusion that we need to come to this House and appeal to you, Mr. Speaker, to make a ruling with regard to those regulations that have been promulgated by statutory bodies who have authority to make those regulations but have not brought them to this House, Mr. Speaker. And while researching on what needs to be done, Mr. Speaker, we came across the ruling of your predecessor, which is dated the 26th of March, 2014, Speaker Muturi, while giving guidance with regard to statutory instruments that are tabled in this House and referred to the Committee on Regulation, on Delegated Regulation. Mr. Speaker, and I would just like to read, and this is what he said. Under Section 11 of the Act, every Cabinet Secretary responsible for a regulation-making authority shall within 7 sitting days after the publication of statutory instrument ensure that a copy of the statutory instrument is transmitted to the clerk for tabling before the House together with an explanatory memorandum in the manner prescribed in the schedule. Upon receipt of the statutory instrument and the memorandum, the clerk enters this instrument into the register required to be maintained under the Act. Mr. Speaker, your predecessor took parliamentary notice that there are certain cabinet secretaries or statutory bodies that do make regulations, they don't bring them, and they require people to comply. And this is what he said, Mr. Speaker. I must observe with great regret that there has been little compliance by the cabinet secretaries with this provision, and I urge the leader of majority party to follow up with the appropriate channels on this issue, as lack of compliance with this requirement is fatal to the statutory instrument being sought to be met, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, although it is fatal, but they continue to ensure that compliance is met. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, Article 94 of the Constitution, subclause paragraph 5, Mr. Speaker, this House is given the exclusive authority to make regulations that have a force of law. Mr. Speaker, there are some busybodies outside that they are purporting to be making regulations without bringing them here, Mr. Speaker. And we know a number of them. If you take, for instance, the Honorable Titus Kamala spent all his times discussing a motion, Mr. Speaker, on the localization of teachers based on guidelines that were made by TSC that were never brought here, Mr. Speaker. And people are complying with them. We are aware, Mr. Speaker, that the governor of Central Bank has also made regulations requiring banks that they should not receive any amounts of money exceeding 1 million shillings without the customer providing reasons as to where the money came from. Mr. Speaker, we are aware of some people who have sold cows, Mr. Speaker. They are paid about 3 million shillings. When they submit the money, don't they take money for banking, they are asked, where did you get this money? In fact, the bank manager asked them to go and take a photo of the cows which they sold. Mr. Speaker, and you know the cows have already been taken. They are in Dakoreti. They have been slaughtered. Mr. Speaker, which evidence would you bring? Mr. Speaker, we are aware of so many people and many others, Mr. Speaker, which we will not mention here. We are aware of them. So we are seeking your direction, Mr. Speaker, that these bodies or persons that have been authorized to make regulations be compelled by the committee, Mr. Speaker, when you give directions, so that we can use Article 125 of the Constitution to summon those entities and those bodies and persons to appear before the committee to present those regulations for consideration to ensure that they comply with both the law and the spirit of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know it is very unfair to subject Kenyans to things that are not law. And then in Article 3, you know, I am expected to uphold and to respect this Constitution and the laws that are made thereunder. Mr. Speaker, those laws have not been made pursuant to this Constitution or the laws that have been passed by this House, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, even people who we have given power, Mr. Speaker, should respect this House. They should, when we have given you power and authority to make regulations, what is so difficult in appearing before this House? You know, Mr. Speaker, under Article 95, 2, we are obligated to resolve issues that are of concern to the people, Mr. Speaker. This is one of the issues that is of very pertinent concern to the people. And this House, Mr. Speaker, must resolve that issue. So we expect your ruling to deal with this issue in which your predecessor noted that it's actually a problem and it is prevalent in government. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would like to request you that you direct the committee to proceed in the manner in which you will cure that lacuna pursuant to standing order number 1, Mr. Speaker. Because there's already a lacuna. And we are proposing, Mr. Speaker, that in the long run, but that will be in the short term, Mr. Speaker, because there are certain things that are going wrong, including the NGCDF, Mr. Speaker. As you know, this board is purporting to make regulations to state that all procurement will be done by the board, including strategic plan, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what strategies they have themselves to sort out the issues of our constituency. Mr. Speaker, and you know, these are guidelines that are a force of law. They have not brought before the House. It has not been brought before. There was the chairman of CDF committee here. He has not said it has come before him, and it has now been brought before our committee, Mr. Speaker. So there are so many things that are happening in this country. People are being enslaved against the Constitution. We have been made to comply with laws that are completely unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. So I seek your direction, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if it will be possible, I would like to plead with you to give us some time to ventilate on this matter. You know, it is a matter of serious concern to the people of Kenya. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I had been approached by the Honorable Junet to raise a similar issue. You'll share the credit, Junet.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this matter that has been raised by Honorable Chepkonga, Mr. Speaker, is a very, very fundamental and important issue. Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that was debated in this House in last Parliament, and we debated a whole afternoon. And that time, the matter was confined to the central bank, the regulations, the illegal regulations that the governor gave to the banks in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, that under the new constitution, there are people in the executive or state bodies that are still operating under the old order, that are not aware that there is a new constitution in this country that says anything that must have the force of law must be passed by this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the havoc, some of the illegal regulations that have been used in this country, the havoc that they have caused in this country, Mr. Speaker, is immense, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look at what has happened in the banking sector, for example. The central bank governor issued orders in form of a letter, which he calls it a regulation, that anybody who is banking with any bank who is putting money above 1 million or withdrawing. Ordinary Kenyans, ordinary citizens who are doing their own businesses must fill a form that requires the customer to tell the bank where he has got the money from, if he's withdrawing, where he's taking it. Now, if you write, Mr. Speaker, that you are withdrawing this money to take to your house, and that information is leaked to a thug, what stops a thug from attacking you at night, Mr. Speaker? He knows the older man who has withdrawn the money is taking. You have to fill in the form. There's somewhere you have to tell the bank manager where you are taking the money. Now the older man or the old lady has told the bank manager, I am taking this money to my house, because that's the truth. She's not taking it anywhere else. That information is leaked to a third. There's Mrs. Mary who has removed 1 million shillings, and she has written here she's taking the money to her house. Why can't I just follow you to your house and rob you the money? Mr. Speaker, the central bank governor, the speaker by then, Honorable Justin Muturi, referred the matter to the delegated legislation, I think, and the finance committee. The central bank governor was summoned by parliament. He came here and he was told, you must bring these regulations within 30 days so that the house can either approve or disapprove. What did he do mischievously? He went and procured someone who can go to court and take him to court, sue him on behalf of central bank, so that the whole matter, he comes back and says, sub judice, I cannot talk about it. He thinks we are fools. We know what he has done, Mr. Speaker, because we represent Kenyans here, we must say the truth. He sued himself so that he cannot be summoned by parliament, that he cannot appear before a committee. I was in parliament by then, Mr. Speaker, and that is how the whole matter died for a whole 3 years, Mr. Speaker, until now, 13th parliament came into place. Mr. Speaker, when we saw here, the first day we appeared here, we swore to defend and uphold the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution clearly says nothing can have the force of law unless it is passed in this House. It's as simple as that. So we want to tell those people, including banks, from the floor of this House, who are operating under illegal regulations, please stop it from today. There is no regulation that is enforced. That was a mere piece of paper that was given to you by the central bank governor. It has no force of law. Parliament is telling you that those things are irregular, those things are illegal, and they are illegalities. Please don't force them on the Kenyan people. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why the delegated legislation committee was put in place, Mr. Speaker. The committee is not in place in vain, Mr. Speaker. It has a chairman, it has members, and their work is to make sure that regulations come to them so that they look at them, they approve them, then they bring them or disapprove and bring it to the House, Mr. Speaker, so that all members can either approve it or disapprove. Mr. Speaker, if this thing is not stopped, I can assure you there are many people, many cabinet secretaries, many state organs or statutory bodies that will come up with their own regulations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is an affront to this House, Mr. Speaker. This is usurping the powers of Parliament that was given to Parliament by the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. And what happens if everybody now decides to do his own or her own things, Mr. Speaker, and don't follow the Constitution? I want to say that whoever is listening to us today in Parliament, Parliament is saying, through the Speaker, who's ruling, God willing, that those regulations are irregular. Don't follow them. Ignore them, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I want to join my two colleagues in expressing my concern also, Honourable Speaker. And this issue that the Honourable Chepkonga has raised goes to the heart of our Constitution in terms of what is defined as a role of Parliament. And I just want to draw members' attention to the provision of Article 94(1) of the Constitution on the role of Parliament, that the legislative authority of the Republic is derived from the people you represent. At the national level is vested in and exercised by Parliament. If you go further to subsection 5 of 94, it says that no person or body other than Parliament has the power to make provision having the force of law in Kenya, except under authority conferred by this Constitution or by legislation. And I think if you read on the Constitution, Articles 90, the entire 94, 95, and 96, that role of legislation is also vested in this House, or rather in Parliament. Honorable Speaker, in consideration of statutory instruments, Honorable Speaker, the House is governed under by the Statutory Instruments Act, of which we enacted in 2013, when myself, Honorable Pio, and Junet were new members of this House. And Honorable Speaker, if you go through our standing orders, I think Standing Order 210, both 210.6 defines what a statutory instrument means. And it says a statutory instrument means any rule, order, regulation, direction, form, tariff of costs or fees, letters patent, commission, warrant, proclamation, bylaw, resolution, guideline, or other statutory instruments issued, made, or established in execution of a power conferred by or under an act of Parliament, under which the statutory instrument or subsidiary legislation is expressly authorized to be issued. And Honorable Speaker, I think what has happened, I just want to agree with Honorable Junet and Honorable Chepkonga. People have simply forgotten where we were post-2013 and before 2013. Because it is before 2013 that you would enact regulations, give orders, without any regard to the role of Parliament. And Honorable Speaker, I just want to beseech you not to allow in your tenure as Speaker that anybody in government, whoever they are, would ignore the role of Parliament as defined in the Constitution. Because, Honorable Speaker, it is indeed true. People in government are issuing regulations and orders left, right, and center. And in most cases, Honorable Speaker, you will notice, and this is something that became very prevalent, especially in the last Parliament, last session of the 12th Parliament, Honorable Speaker. People would do regulations and send them to Parliament when Parliament is on recess. And especially, Honorable Speaker, like this long recess that we are bound to go between December and February, that's when most of the orders and regulations will be done. And they affect, directly they affect the people, Honorable Speaker. And then we get home and we get hammered by our people that laws are being passed, because regulations also become part of the law. Because they're actually laws. It is delegated legislation. It is legislation, subsidiary legislation, that apparently you have delegated to someone else to make on your behalf. But they must make that delegated legislation a subsidiary legislation and then bring it to the House for either our concurrence, like we want to concur with the Senate or refuse to concur, Honorable Speaker, or we disapprove. And therefore, it's only fair, Honorable Speaker, that nobody uses this House as a rubber stamp to merely just send documents when the House is on recess and say by virtue of lapse of time, then regulations become operational. Honorable Speaker, the issue that has been mentioned as an example with Central Bank, Honorable Speaker, the issue of limiting how much money people can deposit or withdraw from banks, Honorable Speaker, is a very sensitive matter and a matter that goes to the core of trade. In this town, Honorable Speaker, down in Nyamakema, people trade with millions of shillings. In my constituency, Honorable Speaker, in Dagoretti, the Honorable Chepkonga just gave an example that I was discussing with him of an elderly Masai herdsman who came and sold his cattle in Dagoretti market, but he cannot move with that money to bank in a bank because the bank manager is asking either he wants to see the cows or he wants to see a photograph of the cows or the buyer of the cows. And in Dagoretti, Mr. Speaker, we buy cattle and we slaughter them there, process and pack meat, and you enjoy the meat here. Therefore, we cannot be asking our herdsmen, our good pastoralists, brothers and sisters, to explain every other coin they get from selling their cattle. 1 million shillings, Honorable Speaker, today are about 10 or 11 bulls. Yeah.
sometimes 5 if they are of good weight. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, these are issues that touch on our role as a House. They touch on issues that touch on the lives of our people. And I would really want to beseech you, Honorable Speaker, to make a considered ruling that will bring back not just our role as legislators, but also our role to oversight the institutions that are making these regulations, and also to represent our people in terms of what laws, what subsidiary legislation through regulations or orders governs our people, Honorable Speaker. And with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to ask you that if and when you make your considered ruling, that you do restore that role of Parliament in line with Article 94, 1 and 5 of our Constitution. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Robert Mbui and Honorable Wangari, then close there.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, for the opportunity.
And take 3 minutes each.
I'll also join my colleagues in confirming that the wisdom of this House in forming the Delegated Legislation Committee was to ensure that all statutory instruments, in other words, subsidiary legislation, is brought for approval in this House. And Mr. Speaker, in the Statutory Instruments Act, Section 11 deals with the laying of statutory instruments on the floor of the House, on the table of the House. And therefore, Section 11 says that the authority that it makes a statutory instrument must lay it within 7 days. Again, Section 11, Part 4 says that if they fail to do so, then that legislation ceases to have effect. Mr. Speaker, the problem that is there is that you need to define, to understand the definition of a statutory instrument. Mr. Speaker, some of these statutory instruments are actually pronouncements that have effect of law. How do you lay a pronouncement on the table of the House? And Mr. Speaker, you'll be surprised to note that even the education system that we are talking about reforming, the CBC education system was never brought to the floor of this House. And there are so many regulations that are also affected. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that you give the House and the Delegated Legislation Committee authority to pick any legislation that they hear that is out there, because we are out there representing people. If we get any legislation that is being made out there, we bring it to the floor, we address it as a committee, and we table it on the floor of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Gilgil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise from where Honorable Mbui has stopped, because I sat in that committee in 12th Parliament, and I think the Committee on Delegated Legislation has a lot of power that they can actually exercise. Any legislation or regulations that have come before the committee and have not been tabled officially, Mr. Speaker, they should actually annul them immediately, Mr. Speaker. Let them go back to the drawing board, the regulation makers, Mr. Speaker, and submit the regulations again, Mr. Speaker. That way, and I saw it happening in last Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we will exercise and be able to stamp back the authority of this House, because we are protected by the law under Section 11, and we are also protected by the Constitution under Article 125. If you feel that any issue out there is being abused, this committee, Mr. Speaker, can be able to actually bring back the dignity of this House, annul the regulations, bring the report on this floor, let the regulation makers go back to the drawing board and resubmit the regulations, Mr. Speaker. That way, the committee will assert themselves right from the start, because the mischief that we saw, Mr. Speaker, is that they wait for the time to almost lapse, and they bring with an idea that it can just self-operate and be able to run without going through the committee. So I hope that the ruling will also guide the committee to actually endorse and actually exercise their powers in annulling all the regulations. Let us go back to the drawing board, Mr. Speaker. That way, the role of Parliament will be protected, and we'll be able to assert ourselves in the 13th Parliament, and the new government, Mr. Speaker, will know that you cannot just make regulations as you wish. It has to be in accordance to the law and in accordance to the Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I will extend to one more Honourable Kamket, and told he was the chair of delegated legislation in the last, and I believe from where he comes from, he's the biggest victim of such.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, indeed, as you've stated, as we speak, Mr. Speaker, there is a security operation in my constituency that has not been enforced through the law. Mr. Speaker, as we were winding up as in the last parliament, as chairman of this particular committee, if honorable members who are in that parliament remember, most of the reports that we brought to this parliament, Mr. Speaker, had one conclusion: annul in entirety. Annul in entirety all the regulations. You know why? Because, Mr. Speaker, most of the regulatory making bodies really had a lot of issues that the regulations they made had issues that were not, either they never conducted public participation, which is a very key element in our constitution, and therefore those who are going to be the users of those the regulations were going to suffer in a very big way. Mr. Speaker, as you make your ruling on this matter, let your ruling, Mr. Speaker, not only become a reminder of the existence of this committee, but also an enforcement of the rule of law, as correctly stated and quoted by the leader of majority. Mr. Speaker, as I finish, there is another mischief that I have noticed, and I want to urge honorable members, and especially the leader of majority and all honorable members, Mr. Speaker, that there is another mischief that the state agencies, especially the ministries, use in order to hide bad laws. They used this omnibus thing called the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill. That is the time they hide bad laws, and they know that members will not have time to scrutinize. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, as you make your ruling on the committee or on the matter of delegated legislation, that's a matter also you may want to consider, because very many state agencies have taken advantage and introduced or amended law in a way that is not helpful to the citizens. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you, honorable members. Indeed, the matter raised by the Honorable Chepkonga is very weighty. Many Kenyans are victims of illegal directions in the name of regulations. There's no shortage of facts. There's no shortage of law. I'll give you a considered ruling on Thursday next week at 2:30. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, development of a unified national policy on small and micro enterprises. Question to be put.
Honorable members, this motion was fully debated and is only for putting the question. Honorable Bensouda, you may take your seat, it's quite long. Take your seat. Honorable members, I now put the question, which is that aware that Kenya's economy is largely driven by the informal sector spearheaded by entrepreneurs presenting themselves in form of small and micro enterprises, SMEs, concerned that the informal sector, popularly known as the Juakali, has different segments and categories spread out in value chains ranging from agriculture, trade, manufacturing, apparels, IT, transport, the creative economy, education, among others, recognizing that there is need to improve coordination of SMEs through development of an all-inclusive, well-structured delivery platform that encompasses multiple solutions and all key stakeholders, noting that this sector has a potential to create employment opportunities to over 80% of Kenya's working population. Further noting that these SMEs have the capacity to leapfrog our nation to a middle-income economy, as witnessed in other economies around the world. recalling that the strong and consistent commitment and political goodwill can deliver the needed growth for the realization of steady and sustainable economic growth, and concerned that previous support by the government to this sector has merely been a knee-jerk reaction in form of skewed funding and tokenism, cognizant that there exists no unified national policy or legislation in support of the sector and SMEs across the entire value chain. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the national government develops a unified national policy on small and micro enterprises, SMEs, detailing recognition, funding, mentoring, expansion, restructuring, and marketing of the SMEs products. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, special motion, appointment of a member to the Parliamentary Service Commission.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on a light note, I noticed the Honorable Junet was very happy when you stood up and you ably protected him from the Honorable Bensouda. And just as I mentioned the Honorable Bensouda, she reappeared. Honorable Speaker, also allow me to appreciate and recognize the students that you appreciated, because part of those students is a group from the school that the Honorable Clive and Honorable Clive went to, and I also went to. Honorable Clive was many years my junior at the school, and of course, Mr. Speaker, I know many members will appreciate it. The school is the Alliance High School. Honorable Speaker, I beg now to move that, noting the resolution of the Senate on Wednesday, 9th November 2022, regarding its partial concurrence on the appointment of members of the Parliamentary Service Commission, notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 49, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 127(2) of the Constitution, this House approves the appointment of the Honorable Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Council Member of Parliament, to the Parliamentary Service Commission under subsection C2 of the said article. Honorable Speaker, members, we recall that on Tuesday this week, the 8th of November, this House passed a motion that approved the appointment of 7 of our members, including the Honorable Faith Getao, Honorable Mohammed Ali, Honorable Deritu Kenywa, Honorable Joyce Korir, Honorable Mishi Juma, Honorable Kingola Patrick, and the Senator Honorable Fatuma Adan Dulo. And Honorable Speaker, this approval was then relayed to the Senate, asking them for concurrence on the issue. However, Honorable Speaker, the Senate did agree with us on 6 of the nominees on the list, but amended the name of the Senator Honorable Fatuma Adan Dulo, CBS MP, replacing her with the Honorable Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Council and MP. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, I'm therefore asking the House to agree with the decision of the Senate. And Honorable Speaker, members will appreciate that in parliamentary parlance, any rejection of a name by either House, we cannot even mediate, because we can't mediate on a name. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, that rejection or non-concurrence by the Senate of the name of Honorable Eric Okongo, Honorable Adan Dulo, and replacing with Eric Okongo Mogeni, basically means that the Honorable Fatuma Adan Dulo has been rejected by the other House. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the best that we can do is to concur with the Senate and allow the commission now to be fully constituted. The commission has to be sworn in and embark on a lot of work that is ahead of the commission. And members will appreciate what the Speaker said, that the commission has a huge
responsibility on matters that pertain to the running of both houses of parliament, matters relating to the welfare of members, Honorable Speaker, and therefore want to urge the House to consider concurring, to concur with the Senate. And I honestly sympathize and empathize with our brothers and sisters from our old party, the party we left, Jubilee Party. We sympathize with you. We wish there's anything we could have done for you. But in due course, maybe something else will come up. And because, Honorable Speaker, as you ably guided, Honorable Speaker, and I would really not want to get into the politics of the Azimio coalition, and this has nothing to do with the politics within the Azimio coalition. It is a decision that has been made collectively by Senate, where the Honorable Fatuma Dulo sits. Therefore, and Okongo Mogeni also sits in that house. That house is better appraised in knowing who better represents them in the commission. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, I really want to urge all of us not to even spend a lot of time on this matter as I move and ask the Honorable Osoro, the Deputy Whip, to second and urge members to concur and agree with the Senate to allow the commission to move on. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, while seconding this motion, Honorable Speaker, I do not really want to also, shelve into the matters of the Azimio coalition. But, Honorable Speaker, there are whispers that are within the plenary in regard to, the nomination or the replacement of Honorable Fatuma. But, Honorable Speaker, this whole thing came from the Senate. We do not need to find ourselves in the same water swimming with the Senate, against the Senate, when you want to move in as a House and proceed with the matters that pertains to the leadership of this House. Honorable Speaker, the PSC matter has been long overdue. It's a matter that has made the whole thing, the operations of the National Assembly and even the operations of the Senate messy. Even the matters that we're discussing here today, even in regards to matters to do with budgeting and traveling and everything, or anything that touches on the members' welfare. Honorable Speaker, that can only happen when there is a constituted commission, which does not exist currently. I'm imagining the position you are at, Honorable Speaker, because you chair a commission currently of members that lost an election, most of members that lost an election. I can imagine the operations, within the commission's offices. I do not want to imagine what they do, but I can tell you, Honorable Speaker, that I know you are in a hard place. And it's important for us to pass this name and proceed. And, Honorable Speaker, I urge you, once we finish passing the name, we proceed with swearing them in and proceed with the work that we deserve to do in the House. But even as I do that, Honorable Speaker, I do not want to be the devil's advocate. But it's important for me to say this, that our Azimio, our brothers from the Jubilee coalition should stop, I'm just being a devil's advocate, they should stop equating themselves with the ODM, because ODM is a big party and they are a small party. Their time of fame ended. I'm just being a devil's advocate. Their time of fame ended. It's a former large party.
Honorable Soro, order. Desist from raising unhelpful passions in the House.
I withdraw, Honorable Speaker. I withdraw, Honorable Speaker, and second.
Order, he has withdrawn. He has disowned those unhelpful remarks. Honorable members, I now propose the question that noting the resolution of the Senate on Wednesday, 9th November 2022, regarding its partial concurrence on the appointment of members of Parliament to the Parliamentary Service Commission, notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order 49, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 127(2) of the Constitution, this House approves the appointment of the Honorable Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Council MP to the Parliamentary Service Commission, under subsection C2 of the said article. Honorable members, before I put the question, order, honorable members, There are two members who have passionately appealed that I give them an opportunity to say something. They are from the aggrieved party of Jubilee. And I want to encourage that we don't open this matter any more than it's necessary. I'll give the Honorable Korere to speak for 5 minutes. And the Honorable Sabina Chege, if you raise unhelpful passions, I'll stop you because you just wanted to make a contribution to this. After that, if it's the mood of the House that we put the question, I'll then come back to do so. Korere, the Honorable.
Asante, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, inafahamika kwamba awali kuna hoja ilipitishwa na nyumba hii kuhusiana na uteuzi wa makamishina ya tume ambaye tunazungumzia juu yake. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, kubatilishwa kwa hoja hiyo katika bunge la Seneti si jambo geni. Na sio vile tunataka kuambiwa kwamba ni Seneti inabadilisha. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii imekuwa ni mazoea na tabia ambayo wamezoea ndugu zetu katika mrengo wa Azimio ambaye ni ODM kufanya siasa za udanganyifu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kucheza siasa za ulaghai na siasa za unafiki. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ndugu zetu kutoka ODM nataka kuwapasha kwamba hao ni wanafiki wabaya sana. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema nikisimama kwenye jumba hii kwamba tulipojiunga nao hatukushurutishwa, hatukulazimishwa, na tutakapowatalaka hatutashurutishwa, tutawatalaka jinsi tunataka. Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nasema hivi kwa sababu nilipokuwa nagombea kiti changu katika eneo bunge la Laikipia Kaskazini, Mheshimiwa Junet na party leader wake walikuja kumpigia debe aliyekuwa mshindani wangu katika chama cha ODM. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, kana kwamba hiyo haijatosha, wametufuata na dhuluma katika jumba hili. Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi kuomba nafasi yetu katika tume sio tafadhali, lakini Mheshimiwa Spika ni haki yetu. Sisi kuomba kuwakilisha watu wetu katika kamati za bunge hii sio tafadhali, tulipigania. Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo tunataka kuwapasha kwamba jinsi tutakapoendelea, ndugu zangu wa Kenya kwanza, musubiri, manake hamukuwa makasisi katika ndoa yetu na hamutakuwa makasisi katika talaka yetu. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nasema wala sina shaka kwamba seneta aliyotajwa ako na uwezo kutuwakilisha katika tume, lakini ukweli Mheshimiwa Spika ni kwamba ODM wametulagai. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, wewe si mgeni kwa ulagai wa ODM. Shukrani Mheshimiwa Spika.
The Speaker is not part of this debate. Honorable Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I want to start from where Honorable Korere ended. Mr. Speaker, though I can tell that the majority will have their way, it is also important for the minority to have theirs. And just to answer my colleague, it is not that we are a small party or we're quitting ourselves with ODM. We are in a mutual relationship. And we also are in a relationship that we demand respect. So Wiper got their share, and from here, Jubilee was supposed to get their share. So we are not saying Omogeni is not qualified. He's actually my friend. All we were asking, Mr. Speaker, but I know I'll not have my way because the majority want we proceed and have the commissioners, is that we would have been given time as a coalition to sit down and agree on a way forward. But Mr. Speaker, because I can read the mood of this House, and I know it's not possible.
Sabina Chege, for the record, the chair overindulged your coalition, and my Honorable Wanda is my witness, to bring the names. And we took a lot of time. I'm not inviting him to say anything. So the issue of time is neither here nor there.
Mr. Speaker, that's why I said I can also read the mood of the House. And I can tell everybody once we move on. But it's good and important to go on record. As we blame our coalition partners, ODM, I don't think we are the ones to be blamed. I want to blame my own party, Jubilee Party. That, Mr. Speaker, Jubilee Party cannot be sending 2 or 3 letters on one issue giving different instructions, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to address, and I'm nominated by Jubilee Party, Mr. Speaker. I want to address my party and say, put your act together. Even on the issue, Mr. Speaker, of Yala, we had 3 letters coming from the same party and giving different names. This is really not... Allow me to speak. So, Mr. Speaker, I will speak like that because the reality of the matter is we gave the name of Aluke. We also gave a different name altogether as one party. So we must have a clear direction from my party. If we are writing a letter, it should be one letter addressing an issue and not again going back and deceiving other people, Mr. Speaker. So as we blame ODM, and I would have loved, and I wish the leadership had the Speaker, because I also reached out to the Speaker, I reached out to you, Mr. Speaker, and I would have loved that we don't clean our dirty linen in public, that we are given just this weekend to sit down as a coalition. But because that will not happen, Mr. Speaker, that's why I said I will choose to address my party. Let us put our act together. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable Sabina Chege. My last glance at your record showed that as a Jubilee member, you are also the Deputy Chief Whip of the side that you are chiding. I'll give the last up to the Honorable TJ Kajwang. Then I'll put the question. TJ, give him the microphone. I'll give you 2 minutes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. You know, there is nothing more expensive now in this House than being a member of Azimio. Because you become a favorite punch bag, but to become a member of ODM is now like having gold. Because everybody seems to think that good things are coming from ODM, even when ODM does not have capacity to deliver. What has ODM not done? ODM allowed the member from Jubilee to be processed in this House. We were here, and we consented, and we voted, and we had allowed Jubilee to have a member which was taken to Senate. What could we do? Did we have to go to Senate and become members there to be able to vote for the Jubilee Party? When somebody is saying here that he's talking about marriages and divorce, you know, method of marriages and divorce is very lucrative, and people laugh a lot. Yeah? But you need to know what happens in people's bedrooms. So you see, when people bring names and discuss parties, when we don't have a right to reply, Mr. Speaker, this is very, very unfair. But of course, people don't make relationships on the streets. They make them in the bedroom. So we know that there's problems. We will go back to the bedroom and do the work properly now. So if Jubilee or any other party has an issue, we cannot be a party which is intimidated every day. We cannot be intimidated every day. And it is only in this parliament where this relationship is decided, you know, halfway. One time, we are not an Azimio. We are not majority or minority. Another time, we go to that same contract to decide the relationship between us. When we are not human beings. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this...
You've made your point.
I've made my point.
Thank you. Order, honorable members. Order. Before I put the question, honorable members, I want to acknowledge the following students in the public gallery. Students from Jiri High School, Kigumo, in Muranga. Students from Kirangari High School in Lower Kabete. And Bensono Institute of Professionals from Westlands, Nairobi. On your behalf, and on behalf of the chair, we welcome them to the House of Parliament. Honorable members, now I put the question. That noting the resolution of the Senate of Wednesday, 9th November 2022, regarding its partial concurrence on the appointment of members of Parliament to the Parliamentary Service Commission, notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order 49 and pursuant to the provisions of Article 127(2) of the Constitution, this House approves the appointment of the Honorable Senator Eric Okongo Mogeni, Senior Council MP, to the Parliamentary Service Commission under subsection C(2) of the said article. Will as many of those opinions say aye? Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, order. Every member has the right to say no or yes or remain silent. Honorable members, I give now the following direction before we go to the next order. All the commissioners who have been approved by both houses will in the next 30 minutes proceed to County Hall. I also invite the leadership of the House, Majority Leader, your Deputy, Majority Whip Deputy, Minority Leader Deputy, Minority Whip Deputy, to proceed to County Hall for the swearing in of the new commissioners to give them an opportunity to start working forthwith. Next order.
Order number 10, special motion, consideration of the nominee for appointment as Inspector General of the National Police Service. Who is the co-chairperson?
Honorable Tongoyo. I'm told.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. I beg to move the following motion that taking into consideration the finding of the Joint Committee of National Assembly, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs, and Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations, in its report on the vetting of Engineer Javet Koome Jebere for approval as Inspector General of the National Police Service, laid on the table of the House yesterday, Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, and pursuant to the provision of Section 12(1) of the National Police Service Act 2011 and Section 8 of the Public Appointment Act 2011, this House approved the appointment of Engineer Javet Koome Jebere as the Inspector General of Police Service.
Order, honorable members. Those who are withdrawing from the chamber, kindly do it quietly. You may proceed, honorable member.
Yeah, members, honorable Speaker, some order, please. So, Madam Speaker, after receiving messages from His Excellency the President on the nomination of Engineer Javet Koome Jebere for appointment to the position of Inspector General of National Police Service, the Speaker of National Assembly and the Senate on Tuesday, 25th October 2022 and Tuesday, 18th, respectively issued a communication and directed the approval hearing for the nominee for the appointment of the position of Inspector General of Police Service be conducted jointly by the both houses of Parliament as required by the Constitution and National Police Service Act 2011. Engineer Javed Koome is currently the Commandant of the National Police College, Main Campus Kigancho. He has over 31 years experience in the police service, and he started as a police constable in 1991 and rose through the ranks over the years. Mr. Speaker, the nominee has served in various senior managerial positions such as Commander, Anti-Stock Theft Unit, OCPD in various regions, officer in charge of practical police work at Kiganjo Police Training College, Deputy Director Planning in Kenya Police Service, Regional Commander in Nairobi, and later the Principal Deputy Inspector General, a position held before he became a Commandant of the National Police College. Mr. Speaker, during his tenure in the police service, Engineer Koome played key role as operational commander during the Tokyo International Conference on Africa Development in Nairobi, United Nations Conference and Trade Development, and the visit by the Pope Francis to Nairobi, Kenya, and the general election of the year 2017, among other major international conferences held in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, Article 245, Section 1 and 245, Section 2A of the Constitution establishes the Office of the Inspector General, which is an office in the National Police Service. The Inspector General is appointed by the President with approval of Parliament. The Inspector General exercises independent command over the National Police Service and perform any other function prescribed by the national legislation. Madam Speaker, the name of the nominee and his curriculum vitae were referred to the Speaker of the National Assembly, to the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs, and by the Speaker of the Senate to the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations. The committees held a preliminary sitting on Monday, the 7th November 2022, to prepare for the approval hearing and consider memoranda received from the public. Madam Speaker, to fulfill the requirement on personal integrity, the clerk on Tuesday, 25th October, wrote to the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, Kenya Revenue Authority, the Ethics and Corruption Commission, the Registrar of Political Parties, and the Higher Education Loan Board to ascertain the nominee's good standing with the said government institutions. The nominee was also required to submit clearance letters from the said agencies. Madam Speaker, the Formation Committee complied with the constitutional and legal requirement and established procedures for the approval hearing. The committees ensured public participation and openness in carrying out the approval process. Notification inviting the public to submit memoranda were placed in the mainstream print media on the 25th of October, as required under the law. Madam Speaker, the committees conducted the approval hearing on 8th, that is on Tuesday, 2022, in conducting the approval hearing. The committee were guided by the provision of the Constitution, the National Police Service Act 2011, and the Public Appointment Act 2011, and the standing orders of the respective houses. Madam Speaker, during the approval hearing, the committee considered the nominees' duly filled questionnaire, the curriculum vitae, the candidates' academic credentials, provisional training and experience, personal integrity and background report from relevant authorities, and oral submission, and made the following observation. 1, that the nominee is an experienced police officer serving at the rank of the Senior Assistant Inspector General of Police. He joined the Kenya Police Service in 1991 and rose through the ranks to his current rank. currently serving as the commandant of the National Police College, Kigancho. He has experience of 31 years in the police service. 2, that the nominee has a rich academic background. He holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Nairobi University, awarded in 1990, and is a registered civil engineer by the Engineers Board of Kenya. In addition, Madam Speaker, he holds certificates and awards on counting violence extremist, regional senior mission leaders courses, transformational organization culture for maximum growth, and major crime management course, among many others, Madam Speaker. The nominee holds several awards in recognition of his outstanding and distinguished service he rendered to the nation in various capacities and responsibilities. During the approval hearing, Madam Speaker, the nominee exhibited knowledge in matters relating to security, law, management, leadership skills, and qualities necessary to administer and manage the command of the National Police Service as a discipline service as prescribed under Section 11 of the National Police Act. That based on the evidence submitted during the approval hearing, the nominee met all the constitutional requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity, and statutory requirement necessary for appointment as Inspector General of the National Police Service, provided for under Section 7B of the Public Appointment and Parliamentary Approval Act number 33 of 2011, that the nominee has never been dismissed from office for contravention of the provision of Article 75(1) or 76, 77, and even 78B of the Constitution of Kenya, that the nominee has the necessary experience and qualified to hold the office of the Inspector General of the Police Service Commission, National Police Service, as per the requirement of the National Police Service 2011. Madam Speaker, the recommendation of the committee is that this House approve the nomination of Engineer Javed Koome Jebere for appointment to the position of Inspector of Police by appointing authority. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, and now I want to call upon, Madam Speaker, my Vice Chair, Honorable Raso, to second.
Yes, seconder?
Yes, it's me. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Chair. I second this motion by saying this, that Mr. Javed Koome is one of the most distinguished police officers in their career. In a very long time, he happens to be one of those who have waited in line for almost 30 years to rise to the very top. For that reason, in this country, if there is justice, fairness, equity, and all those things that are associated with the good things that we find in the Bill of Rights, then anyone can rise to the top. Madam Speaker, as the chairman has already elaborated, we looked at Article 10, Article 243, Chapter 6, in particular Article 73, responsibilities of leadership, conduct, financial probity, citizenship, and leadership. The committee raised several questions with this particular nominee. That has to do with corruption, extrajudicial killings, insecurity, particularly in livestock rustling and killing in Asal and Asal areas. Madam Speaker, this particular nominee has shown us that he is up to the task because he ably answered all the questions that were raised by this honorable committee. Madam Speaker, further to that, I think Mr. Kome comes about as one of those who have rose through the ranks from a constable to senior assistant deputy inspector general. That is indicative that he has been able to do all the police work. His last assignment was the commandant, Kiganjo Police Training College, which is the premier police academy in Kenya. From that, it is showing us a very clear indication that this man has the understanding of police work at all required levels. And for that reason, we believe as a committee that the person we have presented today will be able to do police work, believing and following the Constitution, and also the Police Service Act 2011, and also the amended version, which is 2015. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to call upon the House to approve this nominee so that there is no gap within the Police Service Commission that has not had a DIG, an IG, I think, for the last 2 months or so. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I beg to second.
To propose the question. Honorable members, I'll propose the question first. Honorable members, I propose the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee on National Assembly, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs, and the Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations, in its report on the vetting of Engineer Japheth Koome Chembere for approval as Inspector General of the National Police Service, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, November 9, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 12(1) of the National Police Service Act 2021 and Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011. This House approves the appointment of Engineer Japheth Koome Chembere as the Inspector General of the National Police Service. Okay. Honorable members, is it the mood of the House? So then, honorable members, I'm going to put the question, which is that the mover be called upon to reply, because the mover has a right to reply. May as many or as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Okay, honorable members, then in that case, honorable members, order. May as many as of the contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. So then, honorable members, I call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to thank members by approving the nominee for the position of the Inspector General of Police. And I want to say that the man is up to the task. We know the challenges that are ahead of us in this country. And I want to say, I reply.
Honorable members, I now put the question that taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee on the National Assembly, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs, and the Senate Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations in its report on the vetting of Engineer Japheth Koome Mutembei for the approval of Inspector General of National Police Service, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 12(1) of the National Police Service Act 2011 and Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011. This House approves the appointment of Engineer Japheth Koome Mutembei as the Inspector General of the National Police Service. May as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. May as many of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Honorable members, next order.
Order number 11, motion, tree planting along the roadsides and road reserves.
The Honorable Kiarie. Order, honorable members, those who are withdrawing from the chamber, may you kindly do so in silence. I would like now to invite the Honorable John Kiarie, MP. The Honorable John Kiarie. KJ. Kindly provide the mic to the Honorable John Kiarie.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. And this is a motion on tree planting along the roadsides and road reserves. And Madam Speaker, aware that Article 42 of the Constitution accords every person a right to a clean and healthy environment, and that Article 9, 1D, also mandates the state to encourage public participation in the management, protection, and conservation of the environment, and further aware that deforestation is one of the main contributors to climate change, noting that Kenya has not been spared by the effects of global warming and climate change as a result of deforestation, among other aspects. Also aware that the road network in the country currently stands at approximately 177,800 kilometers, with a development rate of around 600 kilometers per annum, and deeply concerned that there has been persistent destruction of trees and vegetation along the road reserves and roadsides during the road construction efforts, leading to adverse effects on the ecosystem, and also cognizant of the fact that studies have shown that the benefits of the benefits accumulated from roadside tree planting include better soil formation due to the shedding of dead leaves, increased water quality by reducing the sediment flow, reduced erosion, road beautification, flood control as the trees slow and absorb water runoff, wind breaking, and providing important pollinator habitats, improving people's health and protecting crops. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the government includes a component of tree planting in all road network designs, and also makes it compulsory for road contractors to replace any tree harvested during road construction upon completion of the project. Now, Madam Speaker, this motion could not have come at a better time, The world is coming out of Egypt for the COP summit. And Madam Speaker, the effects of drought, the effects of climate change are clear for everyone to see. Today we are talking about a drought situation in this country, Madam Speaker. We are talking of the effects of the adverse results of climate change, including drought, lack of water, and all the other issues that come with it. Madam Speaker, I hail from a city called Nairobi City County. And the history of Nairobi City County is very well associated to the story of climate change, flooding, El Nino, and La Nina. Madam Speaker, when this republic was being formed, the colonizers were looking for a place where they could place a capital city. At that time, they were not looking for a capital city to be a commercial center. They were looking for a place where they could place the headquarters for the railway line. The British were constructing a railway line coming all the way from the coast of Mombasa, looking for their ways into the hinterland to a place called Uganda. And when they were doing this, they wanted a person who can set up a city. And they identified a place called Masaku. And they said that Masaku looks like a good place to put a capital city. And Masaku was going to be the capital city of a republic called Kenya. They dispatched a young man by the name of Ainsworth, who was a district commissioner. He must have been around 20-something years old. And started setting up a city in Masaku. But these Mzungus, on their way up to the escarpment, came across a small, swampy, flat land. Then there was a small market called Kanyonyo, around and about where this parliament sits today. And they saw it to be a flat, beautiful area, and they thought this would be a good place to construct the city. And so they changed the plans and decided instead of putting up the city in Masaku, they decided to put it up where Nairobi sits today. At that point, they were looking for the cool waters coming from Kikuyu Springs. They were looking for the provisions of food that would come from the northern sides. And they thought that the eastern sides, where Kangundo now is and Embakasi, would be a good place for people and workers in the railway to set up their houses. And so Ainsworth started designing a city called Nairobi. Ainsworth was informed by the model of the apartheid movement then. And he drew a city, the capital city, the CBD, in a grid formation all the way down to Grogan Road, and decided to set up the high-end areas for living in Lavington, Kileleshwa, Kilimani, decided that the Asians can reside across the river in Ngara, High Range, Parklands, and Westlands, and decided that the natives, the Africans, can be set up somewhere around Modhurwa so that they can get their provisions on the northern side and the eastern side around Kangundo. And they set up a city. What they did not know is that they were setting up a city in the time of La Nina. Soon after, the colonialists were to regret when the El Nino rains started beating the city. Immediately, Ainsworth realized that Nairobi was actually an undrainable quantities larger than any other tree. And Ainsworth set upon planting blue gum trees in this city. And he planted so many of them, Madam Speaker. If you walk down to a place called the National Theatre or the Norfolk, you can see the relics of these trees. Big, massive trees, probably 100 and something years old. But Ainsworth did not stop at the city. He set up to planting these trees along the roads. If you see Ngong Road, before the expansion, it was lined with many trees going all the way to Karen. If you look at Waiyaki Way, There were trees lining up Oyaki Way on both ways, on both sides of the road. Around the state house area and Arboretum area, these trees have been there for more than a century. Madam Speaker, in our recent efforts to construct roads, we have cut all the trees that Ainsworth planted over a century ago. Of course, Madam Speaker, with new technology, we have also, with new science, we have also come to learn that there are some trees that are not good for the environment. This blue gum tree and the eucalyptus being one of those trees. However, the efforts of the founders of this city were noble. The efforts were well informed. In fact, beyond the blue gum tree, Nairobi had trees planted all over the place. When I was growing up, I remember back then the Goreti constituency would span all the way from Gigiri all the way to near Kikuyu. And this was the green side of the city. Beautiful tree cover. I remember going to school, James Gishuru Road used to have this beautiful canopy of trees, jacaranda trees. It was amazing when the full bloom was in season. Beautiful jacaranda, purple flowered trees lining James Gishuru's road all the way from Wayaki Way to Dagureti Corner. Beautiful trees. But what has happened, Madam Speaker? With the construction of roads, these trees are being felled. And in fact, no one even knows where the timber has been going. What has happened, as we are building the roads, we have cut out all the greenery. We have cut out all the trees. The effects, we are feeling them. The city is way hotter. The city is way drier. The city is less beautiful. What used to be the green city in the sun, Nairobi, is no more. Madam Speaker, what has happened to Nairobi has happened to almost every other urban center in this country and beyond. That today, even landmarks, because back then trees were beautiful landmarks. Around the area of Hurlingham, you remember, you would see beautiful trees. No one even knew where DOD was because DOD used to be well covered with trees. Today, buildings are exposed, homes are exposed, installments and government buildings are exposed, but with it comes many other issues, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the import of this motion is to move this House to agree with me that we can put it in law that every contractor who has been contracted to build a road can actually plant trees at the end of their contract. It can even be put in law that the quantity of trees that need to be planted per kilometer. Madam Speaker, when I was moving this motion, I did say that we are building roads at the pace of 600 kilometers per annum. You can imagine 600 kilometers of road covered with a canopy of trees on both sides, how much afforestation we can be doing per year. Madam Speaker, roads can become a corridor for focus area in afforestation. Roadside trees will make a significant improvement, Madam Speaker, to the quality of roads and the quality of our environment, Madam Speaker. The mess that is caused by cutting a tree here can be felt as far downstream as the River and beyond. People do not know the concept of the oneness of existence, that today you can mess up a water catchment area in Karura and the effects will be felt in Katonzweni, that you can block a waterway in Kikuyu and the person who will suffer is somewhere in Sultan Hamud. The oneness of existence, Madam Speaker, that if we were to be our brothers' keepers, we can start by planting a tree. That today, planting one tree here is going to save a life somewhere far downstream than you can even imagine. Madam Speaker, it is the great man, Martin Luther King, who told us that we should be our brother's keeper. But if we should not be our brother's keeper, Martin Luther King tells us, if you cannot be your brother's keepers, at least don't be your brother's executor. Anyone cutting a tree is a brother or sister's executor, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, even the children in the gallery today will tell you the benefits of planting a tree. They will tell you that when you plant a tree, you are able to bind the soil with some organic matter. We have scientists in this chamber, Madam Speaker. I see the Honorable Professor Lillian Gogo. She will tell you that the benefits of planting a tree go beyond beautification. They go beyond the aesthetic properties of having a beautiful and green city. She will tell you that when you plant a tree, you are aiding and enhancing the infiltration of water retention in the soils, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, without being verbose, I'm just requesting this House and the honorable members who are here this afternoon to just agree with me that it would be in order for us as a House to be not only our brothers and our sisters' keeper, but the preservers of our environment, by proposing that we put it in law that every contractor who is awarded a contract, in the course of their contract, will not get paid the full payment until they have met the threshold of reforestation by planting back the trees that they have cut and by meeting the threshold that will be set by this new law of tree planting by contractors in road construction. Madam Speaker, with those very many remarks and a trip down history lane, I would like to move the motion on the afforestation and planting of roads along the roadsides and road reserves. And by moving it, I want to call upon the very esteemed ranking member, the Honorable Wanjiko Mohea, representing the people of Kipipiri, to second this motion. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The member for Kipipiri. Kindly pass the mic to the member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. What Honorable KJ didn't say is that there can't be a better member to second this motion, because the member speaking hails from Nyandarua County, the water catchment area from Abadeas, the only county which rains even in January. And Madam Speaker, again, why this is the best member to second this motion is the immediate Yala former member who comes from Arusha, the green city of East Africa. And those who have visited Arusha, you must be aware that Arusha is one of the most beautiful cities in our region, from the trees which are all over in the town. Honorable Speaker, climate change is real, and climate change is here catching up with us, and we only have to have ways, creativity, innovation, to find ways to curb climate change. And for this, I commend the member for coming up with this creative way of curbing climate change through afforestation, especially along the road, and particularly by making it low, because we cannot live without infrastructure. We are investing heavily in infrastructure. So the same infrastructure will carry together the afforestation, and in that case, we shall be harvesting two investments together. Honorable Speaker, we know the emission, the carbon emission from trucks, the fumes, which can only be controlled by the trees along the road. And to enhance the quality of air, this is the only very, very best approach. Personally, when I looked at this motion, I was hesitant because I didn't read through the motion. And the member told me, go and read the motion, and I really loved it. You can see the passion when he is explaining how Nairobi was beautiful, and I want to agree with him. I had two negative issues because I have seen, particularly near DOD, how the shades of some trees were creating confusion, making imaginary bumps, and almost causing accident. And I was limiting my thinking to that one line. But when I read this motion, I really must commend the member. Honorable Speaker, you know the cost of infrastructure is too high in this country, particularly on drainage, especially in counties like mine, some counties like Kericho, Rift Valley counties where there is heavy rains most of the seasons. These drainage, even if they are made very well, they also clog with water time and again. So afforestation along the road will also help us to maintain our drainage system because the water will be consumed by the trees. Honorable Speaker, we shall also reduce the noise pollution. I think, members, you may know that trees can also curb the noise. And you know, noise is also a climate factor, because in the current life, we are so overwhelmed by the lifestyle. In fact, I can go ahead and say that this afforestation, we also bring health, wellness, particularly mental health care, because this is one of the therapies. This is like a psychological therapy. When one is driving along a very green highway, and no one doesn't really care, everyone cares to see something beautiful, and you drive seeing very beautiful city or highway, it is also a therapy. So with the current overwhelmed lifestyle, you find yourself getting healed. So for mental health, and it is also a threat today, we are having many cases of mental health. This is one way of also facilitating this kind of free therapy, which is not going to be charged by anyone. Honorable Speaker, without many points to this, we may remember Nakuru Highway before the express road was constructed from Nakuru Branket somewhere all the way to Nakuru town, how beautiful it was for those maybe who have not found Nairobi city without this express highway. So the many examples that we can give are not even enough. We can only imagine driving in a green city, in a green highway, getting that psychological therapy, very beautiful, and I think we cannot even deliberate more than supporting this motion, but putting a caution, because we have seen SGR, and though this contract is always having hide and seek game, but we know for sure there was some requirement of planting grass, but I think the contract could have been finished, but we rarely see the grass. In fact, I think going forward, the members of this House may consider to amend the PFM Act and consider to be bringing some contracts in this House, so that if there is a very big contract of a certain express, maybe from here to wherever, the members can ensure that what we have legislated on, like this tree planting, that contract is carrying that together. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I wish to say that I support this motion, when members will be traveling in this world, particularly the new members, deliberate and see if you can visit a country like Finland, which I happen to have visited. Also very beautiful because it is thousands and thousands of kilometers, which is green. And this is a country which also have a lot of GDP from afforestation. So I want to support, congratulate the member, and say, as the House, let us also come with other creative, innovative ways of curbing climate change, which is a serious threat to humankind today. Thank you.
Very well, Member for Kipipiri. Honorable members, before I proceed to propose the question, I would like to recognize the following schools seated in the public gallery. Molo Highway Secondary School from Molo constituency, Nakuru County. Socorro Girls Secondary from Molo constituency, Nakuru County. Arimi Secondary School from Molo constituency, Nakuru County. Goldmine Academy from Runyenjes constituency, Embu County. Honorable members, on my own behalf and that of the National Assembly, I would like to welcome to observe proceedings of the House. Honorable members, I would like now to propose the question, which is that, aware that Article 42 of the Constitution accords every person the right to a clean and healthy environment, and Article 69(1)(d) also mandates that the state to encourage public participation in the management, protection, and conservation of the environment. Further aware that deforestation is one of the main I would like to take that again. Further aware that deforestation is one of the main contributors to climate change, noting that Kenya has not been spared by the effects of global warming and climate change as a result of deforestation, amongst other aspects. Also aware that the road network in the country currently starts at approximately 177,800 kilometers, which is a development rate of 600 kilometers per annum. Deeply concerned that there has been persistent destruction of trees and vegetation along the road reserves and roadsides during road construction, leading to adverse effects on the ecosystem. Cognizant that studies have shown that the benefits accumulated from roadside tree planting include better soil formation due to shedding of dead leaves, increased water quality by reducing sediment flow, reduced erosion, road beautification, flood control, and the trees slow and absorb water runoff, wind breaking, providing important pollinator habitats, improving people's health, and protecting crops. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the government includes a component of tree planting in all road network designs and also makes it possible for road contractors to replace any tree harvested during road construction upon completion of the project. Honorable members, I would like to give the first opportunity to the Honorable Kuria Kimani, MP for Molo constituency.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And from the onset, I would like to welcome our great future doctors, engineers, professors from the great constituency of Molo constituency, led by, yes, and members of parliament. Thank you, Honorable Member. Led by Molo Highway Secondary School, Arimi Secondary School, and Socorro Girls Secondary School. Madam Speaker, in the view of trying to encourage education in my constituency, I've always endeavored to make sure we give an exposure trip to students in my constituency. And so this morning we went to Kenyatta University, and they all promised me that they're going to work very hard to make sure they join Kenyatta University and other institutions of higher learning and our TVTC across the country. Madam Speaker, I would like to congratulate the Honorable KJ Kiarie for coming up with such a very important motion during a time when we have a discussion about climate change. Madam Speaker, one Khalid Gebron said, "Trees are poems that the earth writes upon the sky. and Kuria Kimani would like to add, and when the trees write these beautiful poems to the sky becomes kind and gives us rains. Not too much rains as to destroy our land, but enough to grow our food. When you plant these trees, the sky rewards us by giving us wind. Wind that blows cool breezes to cool our brains, but not too strong as to destroy our homes. Madam Speaker, the debate now across the world is about climate change. And as an economist, Madam Speaker, I was trying to find out, is there by any chance a relationship between economic stability or economic growth and climate change? And Madam Speaker was able to establish that climate change is now considered one of the greatest threats of economic stability. And for starters, Madam Speaker, just to give an example, the heat waves, when temperatures are too high, the productivity of people reduce. That is why the productivity of people usually is the lowest between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. when the sun, when it's scorching sun. And remember, Madam Speaker, that labor is one of the factors of production. And therefore, if you're not productive because of the excess heat, then it will reduce your productivity and therefore affect economic stability of any particular country across the world. And this is just a simple example. If I'll go to more technical, Madam Speaker, in my research, using data carried out in 174 countries, Matthew Kahn et al., that means and other authors, through an IMF working paper entitled Long-Term Macroeconomic Effects of Climate Change Across Country Analysis, showed using novel economic strategy proved that persistent changes in climate change has long negative effects on economic growth. So, Madam Speaker, this is a study that has been done by a combination of economists and environmentalists that showed actually that change in climate growth statistically has negative impacts on economic growth. Increase in average global temperatures, Madam Speaker, at around 0.04% per annum reduces world's GDP by 7.22%. So we're talking about that increase in temperature leading to a decrease in global GDP. Direct connection. And to even show it further, that countries that do not have mitigation measures, so countries that do not deliberately put up measures to stop this negative climate change, the impact was seen to be double. So therefore, Madam Speaker, if we do not deal with this elephant in the world, not just in our country, on climate change, and the easiest way and the most logical way is to plant trees. But Madam Speaker, why are we planting these trees? And it's at a time when we are competing, land is competing against many other economic activities, be it housing, one of the agendas of Kenya Kwanza government, be it farming for food, because that's not tree planting. So in a space where we are competing against this land as one of the factors of production, and we have a lot of land in our highways, then this motion by Honorable KJ cannot come in at any more particular handy time than right now. So I hope and pray that this Honorable House approves this motion, and not just approves it, that we are going to have in every contract of building a road in this country. And as I'm looking forward to completion of the Njoro Molo road, Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that we'll have first this motion so that the contractor doing the road, as soon as he completes doing the road, can start planting trees across that highway. And when this is done in an organized way, because, Madam Speaker, one of the other challenges someone might put up in planting trees along the highways is how that affects visibility of drivers along the roads. But with proper planning, there are some trees that don't grow so tall. There are some, for example, we're going through corners, we don't have to plant those trees across those corners. And so if done properly, we will have trees on our highways. We are going to mitigate against the negative effects of of climate change, and then we are going to achieve a better tree cover. And after all, Madam Speaker, once these trees mature, then they become a source of income and a source of raw materials, for example, for our construction and for affordable housing agenda, Madam Speaker. I would like even to add, in as much as we are planting trees, I want to add more value to this motion by saying, let us plant fruit trees also as part of those trees. It would be, imagine how good it would be if you walk along the highway and there are trees and there are fruit trees, and you just find a mango fall, and then you can just munch it, and it can cool down your temperatures. So that will even help us mitigate against the issues of drought that we are facing in this country, Madam Speaker. As I do that, I hope that the students who joined us here today, that once you go back to Aremi Secondary School, once you go back to Socorro Girls Secondary School, once you go back to Molo Highway Secondary School, we are going to see an improvement in the number of trees that we are going to plant in those trees. I look forward, and I will donate those trees for you. I will donate fruit trees so that in the next few years, those that join that school in a few years to come will have better shades to sit on even when they are revising for their exams. And when they get hungry, they can just pluck some trees and enjoy their afternoon. With that, I thank you, Madam Speaker, and really congratulate the Honorable KJ for this very timely motion. Thank you, Mr. Madam Speaker.
Very well, Member for Molo. The Honorable Member for Rangwe Constituency, Honorable Lillian Gogo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Madam Speaker. I appreciate and celebrate you. I congratulate you for getting into the Speaker's panel to work together with the Honorable Papa Wetangula. Kindly guide our assembly well. I also want to take this honorable chance, Honorable Speaker, to appreciate our students in the House. We were once students. We sat in seats like you, and we have been like you. The future of Kenya is with you, and we thank you for coming to see what is happening at the National Assembly. We appreciate you and hope that one of you, 2 or 3 or 10, or most of you will get to Parliament. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, allow me to appreciate my colleague and friend, the Honorable KJ, because this is a man who is very magnanimous with his thinking process, to the extent that he looks at the future Kenya. I think by virtue of his age, he's advantaged to want to have and live Kenya in a place that is better than how he found it, especially when he considers matter that is environment. About the motion, I rise to support it on the basis that anything that adds life to this planet is something that is worth supporting. Why should I talk about this? I should think, Honorable Speaker, that trees planted along any roadside or highway has a calming effect. You want to get out of the busy city or within the city, and you would hear birds humming. The hummingbirds would calm you off your stress. And we realize that in the generation that we are living in, Honorable Speaker, we live in a very, very stressed generation. I think this would be a very, very, very good way of looking at people even just walking along 10 kilometers under a shade and exercising and getting good health. If you do a road, plant trees. And better still, it has been proposed that we could have some of them as fruit trees. Pluck a mango, chew, walk for another 5 kilometers. And this is the Kenya that we want. And even on this same platform as I contribute on this matter, I want to implore the sitting president, President Ruto, that he should come up with a day for Kenya where we have a walking day to the extent that Kenyans can just walk along the roadside, no motorists driving that day, so that we can exercise and become a healthy nation. Most of our young people, Honorable Speaker, are engaged in having tree nurseries. They have tree nurseries, and they literally beg, they don't have where to sell their ware. This would be a very good way of empowering our young people, Honorable Speaker. because they will get a place where they can sell their, the seedlings that they have planted from their nurseries. Having said that, someone has talked about Finland. Indeed, it is a beautiful country. But we want to have our version of Kenya and Finland, where people can come and see the beauty of nature. Nature in planted trees, planted in an organized manner, planted in a way that is anchored in law, planted in a way that it is supervised, it is monitored, it is evaluated, and then we see the result of this kind of a legislation. On that, I want to support Honorable Kiare with the motion that is proposed on the floor of the House. Oh, the beautiful Nakuru. I've lived in Nakuru for more than 30 years, Honorable Speaker, and I heard somebody made mention of the trees that were along the highway as you got into Nakuru and as you got out of Nakuru. And this happened in the time that I was living and staying there. I am telling you, Honorable Speaker, Nakuru people cried when the trees went down. And even then, they have made an effort to plant things that look like trees, but they can never be what Nakuru was. If we were to have that kind of, I envisage a situation where this is done and in the long term, 20, 30 years, and we have that kind of a picture along our highways, as proposed by the Honorable KJ, I think Kenya would be a beautiful place to live in. I want to also talk about probably regulating the kind of trees that are planted if this motion finds its way through. Well, of course, we have the taproot system, the hardroot system. The kind of root system of trees that is planted may also be a burden on the road that has been constructed. So all this should be taken into account as we legislate on this matter, so that once we do it, then it comes and comes to last. Another matter that I want to weigh in, Honorable Speaker, is that we want to mitigate on issues of drought. We want to mitigate on issues of calming the environment. There are, of course, most roads, they are on places where also humans live. And there would be catchment of dust, and then I think this would be a very good way of helping the homes and the construction systems that are around these roads. Why not beautify Kenya, Honorable Speaker? Why not make Kenya a very, very beautiful city? Why not make interconnecting sub-counties connected with trees and roads? I think this would really make a very, very, very beautiful Kenya. The Honorable KJ, we have to continue with this. We have to make it different. I rise to support this motion, Honorable Speaker, and thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you. I thank you.
Thank you. Now, the Honorable Member for Njoro, Honorable Kadhambi Chepkwony.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity for me to contribute to the motion which has been brought by Mheshimiwa KJ in relation with the planting of trees, even when the contractors are doing roads. Madam Speaker, allow me to support the motion and comment on some few issues. The destruction of forests in this country, Madam Speaker, the destruction of most of the forests we have seen in this country, it has also caused, there has been a reduction of quality and the quantity of water. Madam Speaker, I want to support KJ on that motion in relation with the serious matter of climate change. I think it has become the talk, the global talk. It is the high time, Madam Speaker, that we, all of us, walked the talk now. This is the high time for each one of us to take an action, because the truth is, the climate change has affected all of us. We cannot forget the point of drought, the famine in this country, the food insecurity, in this country. Right now, Madam Speaker, it is good we say that the destruction of the forest in this country has also affected the rainfall cycle in this country. And it reminds me of our late Wangari when she was telling us our own actions might affect us in the future. And she even emphasized that the nature does not forgive. Because of the destruction of our nature itself, it is now affecting us. But we wish to support KJ by saying we have to take an action so that we can save our future generations, because currently we are so much affected. On that point, as I support, it will be also the biggest responsibility for the Ministry of Environment to make sure that the right agencies are supported financially in this country. Like the Kenya Forest Research Institute. That is one of the institutes which must be supported by the Environment Ministry. Why am I saying that, Madam Speaker? It is because they have researchers who are going to assist us national-wise to know the kind of species of trees which must be planted, which specific areas. Therefore, Madam Speaker, when we take action, and the first action, as Mheshimiwa KJ is saying, and I support that because I also had a related motion which also might be coming. It was in relation with tree planting, but in another different way, where I was proposing we can also be serious on this matter so that we can also have a national tree planting day. And not only that we are saying the contractors can plant trees, we can also make it more better, because as we are here members of parliament, in the constitution, we still champion for it through the issues of saying that we want 10% forest cover. As we are here, Madam Speaker, it is we rather be very honest with one another, that we have not even achieved 6% of the forest cover in this country. Therefore, we seriously support that idea, and we request the Minister of Environment to support the respective agencies, including Kenya Water Towers, so that they can also see how we can support in whichever capacity. Madam Speaker, I was just adding the point of saying that because of lack of trees, which naturally have a scientific influence on the rainfall cycle, it has affected the food production in this country. Therefore, I think when we take an action of planting trees and increasing the forest cover in this country, it will be also another point to make sure that we have better rainfall, and we also have enough rainfall to enable farmers to have good production of food in relation to reduce the insecurity of food in this country. Madam Speaker, therefore, my point was just to support the idea of Mheshimiwa KJ. KJ, we support this, and also support the concept of Mheshimiwa Gogo, who has said, let us do it in the best way so that in our country we can be a model country in this Africa continent. And also we should also support the point of the President recently, when he said he is going to make also the Directorate of the Council of which was put in the Climate Change Act at least be active. With that and with everyone being included and taking a specific action, I think we have time that we can make this country more better. I think also to support that point, we should go beyond and make sure that even when these contractors are making these roads, when they are destroying these roads, when they are destroying our trees in the process of making roads, I think when trees are being planted by the youths, it will be another way also for creation of jobs to our youth. Therefore, thank you very much for giving me this time, Madam Speaker, and congrats for being a speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kadambi. The Honorable Florence Jematia. seems to be absent. The Honorable
I just want to correct my name. It's not Catherine Ombaka. It is Christine Ombaka.
Honorable Member, let me take that again.
It is
the Honorable Member for Siaya County, Honorable Christine Ombaka. You may proceed.
Thank you for getting it right. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. It's a wonderful thing to talk about environmental conservation. It's really great to talk about environmental protection, tree planting, all which give us life. As Mheshimiwa KJ presented this bill, I saw a picture of trees all over the highway. And I've seen that kind of picture actually in a painting, which is really beautiful, really, really awesome. I can imagine that what I saw as a picture can be translated into what is life. A highway with trees all over, on the way that the road meanders. That's how the trees also meander along that particular road. If I remember my English very well, my teacher told me, such a road with trees all over is called a boulevard. A boulevard is beautiful. I think that is what this bill is all about. Creating roads, constructing roads with boulevards, with trees all over. It's so calming. It's so fresh that you just want to walk and enjoy the trees. I think we lack that today. The description he presented made me feel that we have lost so much in terms of environmental protection. We should have thought of this a long time ago. If you look at the street of Nairobi, between Nairobi and the airport, you don't see trees. What you see is concrete of a highway meandering in the air all the way up to the airport. You could imagine if the trees were planted alongside this concrete highway. What a beautiful sight that could be. It is so refreshing, it is so marvelous. It makes you feel like this is Nairobi, it's beautiful. I think we lack that. It's so empty so far. The trees are so empty. What we see is nothing but houses and buildings and concrete roads. There is so much dust. Nothing stops the wind from blowing and you cough all the way. I've lately been coughing because of the wind and the sand that is blown all over, and the trees are not there, no birds to sing for us, and nothing to appreciate. I really think that kind of environment with a boulevard, that kind of environment with trees planted all over, I think that is a beautiful country. That's a beautiful sight to see. Thank you so much for that presentation. But we lack action. How many times has this House debated over tree planting and environmental conservation? So many times. Ever since I came to this Parliament 2013 up to now, every Parliament, every time we are here, the issue of environment crops up. And I think we talk too much and we do too little. I think this is the time now to be more serious than ever before. We are seeing with our own eyes. We are seeing day and night how drought affects us, how animals, leave alone human beings, die miserably. We see nothing but skeletons. This is what is presented to us on television, in the newspapers, all over the world. They know there is hunger in Kenya and that children, women, animals are all dying. But they are dying so miserably, so thin, nothing but skeletons.
environment is polluted. We need to take action and protect our environment. I think we always try to improve the environment, but not putting much effort. We rely on school kids planting trees. We do not rely on adults doing it. We have so many clubs. We have so many organizations, so many institutions that preach or plant trees here and there. They preach environmental protection, conservation, but little is done, very little action. Otherwise, with all this talk, plant trees, surely Kenya would be green. But that shows that we just talk and do little. I just do believe that if we take action, if we talk and put action in place, a lot will be saved. Our lives will be prolonged, people will live longer, people will be more healthy, and we shall enjoy the environment. Nature is a beautiful thing. Just enjoy the painting in your house with nature, a painting of nature, a long river, painting with the trees. You put it in your bedroom. It's just nice and calming because you just paint. It's a painting, but it's so glorious. Nature, when we plant trees, how beautiful. We can live longer. We can save lives. We can protect the lakes and the rivers and the roads that we walk along or we ride our bicycles on or drive our vehicles on will be so tantalizing. It will be so beautiful. You will enjoy being a Kenyan and will say, long live Kenya. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I want to support this bill. It's so real, it's so practical, it can be done. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Rindikiri Mugambi, member for Buri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, let me take this opportunity to congratulate you and to tell you you look beautiful on that seat and you continue smiling. You are going to make the house lively. Madam Speaker, I stand. When I look at a lady smiling, I see a tree or a flower. We would not be doing good if we don't see our ladies in the house.
Honorable member, please, you are making the speaker to blush.
Thank you,
So
Madam Speaker.
I request that you focus on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That was on a light note, because what we are talking about today, Madam Speaker, is the benefit of having a friendly environment, specifically green environment, either the trees or flowers. Madam Speaker, I grew up from a family whose business was timber business. And I'm so proud my late dad is known in my constituency as one of the pioneers of the first generation of mastery timber merchants, but who also planted so many trees in the area around Mount Kenya. I want to thank my friend KJ for bringing up this motion. How I wish he could make some amendments so that we are not only we are planting trees on the highways and lawns, but also to make it compulsory for every contractor to allocate 30% of the contract to the youth and women, and that will focus on tree and flower planting. Mr. Speaker, we all agree trees bring beauty, fresh air, shade. There are some trees which are good for animal feed. There are trees which are good for just scenery. Mr. Speaker, we are now in a situation where climate concern is a serious issue in the world. Mr. Speaker, my daughter today adopted an elephant. My daughter today.
Yes, what is out of order, the honorable member for Kitui West?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to correct my member. She's referred to you as Mr. about 3 times. So let him correct that. Thank you.
She has referred to me as she. So it is cancelled, and much apologies, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed with the motion.
Madam Speaker, I was saying the concern of climate change. Today, my daughter adopted an elephant at the Nairobi National Park. Every Kenyan is being asked today to take care of an animal that is dying. Every Kenyan today is being asked to contribute to food, water, whatever we can, because of the effect of climate. The encroachment of the desert has affected the entire country. This motion is looking at being part of that generation that put something to beautify our country, to make it look beautiful, to contribute to a good scenery. So when a Member of Parliament, Mana KJ, it has come the right time. I ask you to amend this motion to make it compulsory that every contract that is awarded as a clause on tree planting, and also 30% of that contract, of that clause, the amount put to be allocated to youth and women. Because, Madam Speaker, sorry, the problem that we have is not planting trees. The problem is not planting trees. The problem is how to take care of those trees, Madam Speaker. For a tree to grow, it must be watered, it must be protected against destruction by animals and human beings. There are people, Madam Speaker, who are good at stealing seedlings. Mr. Speaker, is something that we need to think through, because we can approve the motion, but now how do we implement this motion? Madam Speaker, we have a problem of what kind of type of trees that can grow in specific areas. The place I come from, there's a lot of water. If you go to Isiolo, they require different species of trees, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we need to involve the Kenya Forestry Research Institute. We need to involve the Kenya Forestry Services to work in conjunction with the contractors who will be putting up highways on our in Kenya. The other issue, Madam Speaker, is I urge that as we pass this motion, and I will ask the mover to amend such that a certain amount of money that is being brought in through climate change fund to be allocated to planting trees along the highways. I'm aware, Madam Speaker, there's a lot of money that is being dispersed by the government, and some of it need to be allocated to planting trees along the highways. Madam Speaker, tree planting to make Kenya look beautiful will not only be done on the highways. How I wish we start now protecting our water catchment areas. There have been a massive destruction of water catchment areas by way of encroachment by those ones who are bordering the catchment areas, destruction of hills, which used to be covered by trees long time. I think as we move forward on the highways, we also need to look at the water catchment areas. Madam Speaker, I know of large-scale farmers in my constituency. They have trucks and trucks of land, and we pass it through. We need to make it compulsory also. Any farms along the highways, they also be argued, all instructed, or are required by law to plant trees on the boundaries. Madam Speaker, there are some road reserves which are not going to be enough. That's true. We can plant trees and the next day they are uprooted. So we need to have a minimum distance of the road reserve where trees can be planted. So, Madam Speaker, I think this motion is coming at the right time, and I support the tree planting concept, but with the amendment that I've just spoken about, the 30% of the contract, the water catchment areas to go in line with the tree planting. Then we have also spoken about all the track lands along the highways. May it be made compulsory that the ones, the owners are made, it's made compulsory for them to plant trees. With those few remarks, I support.
Very well spoken, member for Mburi. The Honorable Ngusia Nguna, member for Mwingi West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to congratulate you for making it to Speaker's panel. It's an achievement, and I laud you for that. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this motion, coming at a time when we've just concluded the issue of climate change in Egypt. Madam Speaker, I've been very lucky to be raised up in Europe, especially in Greece, Asia, and also traveled to United States of America and practically seeing what we are speaking about today. Madam Speaker, when KJ was actually introducing this motion, I recalled how I had a moment in World Cup, during World Cup in Russia, where you could just step out of your car along the road, you drink water under a tree. What a beautiful environment. I am rising to support this motion because I know that if properly implemented, Madam Speaker, we are going to have another beautiful country called Kenya. I don't need to highlight the importance of trees. Trees gives us oxygen. When you are traveling, your oxygen, you are breathing nice air, your journey, it cuts your journey short and it makes your journey interesting. Trees also store carbon monoxide, which we breathe out, Madam Speaker, and also which is actually exhausted from our vehicle. Madam Speaker, there is also an issue of trees. If we plant alongside the highways and our roads, it will stabilize the environment and improve drainage system in our country. These are some of the importance of the factors of planting our trees. And Madam Speaker, there are so many importance we can talk about. But let me talk of the issue of noise pollution. Studies have shown that trees reduce the level of pollution, noise pollution especially. In this advent of urbanization, advent of everybody moving actually urbanization and industrialization, if at all we are going to implement what KJ has introduced in our floor, Madam Speaker, we are going to experience this. Now it has changed to Mr. Speaker. So let me congratulate KJ for this, for what he has done. It's really very important.
Yes, Member, what is out of order?
You should correct that.
No, Okay, you now have the microphone. What's your point of order?
The point of order is the member is addressing you as Madam Speaker instead of Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. He has since corrected. Thank you. You may proceed.
Speaker, I was unlucky. You are just exchanging seats while I was talking. So I was still revering Madam Speaker, but now I'll call you Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for correction. I was talking about the management of drainage system. If at all we are going to do this, we have seen so many money allocated towards just road maintenance. Every time you drive along the highway, you just see people just cutting or rather trimming grasses. Why can't we allocate that money actually towards planting trees instead of trimming or rather maintaining our roads? So, Mr. KJ, I think I really support you on this. We need to start acting. We need to speak, to stop speaking and put actions in place. Let us plant trees. Even if at all it means that contract to be allocated 2% of the amount to go towards planting trees along our highway. If I can actually be part of this committee legislating on this matter, I think we can actually do benchmarking in Russia. Russia has really done exemplary very well in terms of this issue, and it's a very beautiful country. So with those few remarks, I also want to put on the emphasis of considering the type of trees we are going to plant. Let us not take some of the drought-resistant trees to Naivasha, or rather in areas where there is a lot of water. Let us, when we are planting a tree, we consider the environment in that particular area. If an highway is in Mombasa, let us plant mwarubaini and other trees that are drought-resistant. And also, planting is not a matter of just planting. Let us protect trees when we plant them. With those few remarks, I passionately support this motion. Thank you.
Honorable Yusuf Hassan Kamkunji.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak and once again contribute to another incredibly beneficial motion presented by the legislator for Dagoretti South, Honorable KJ, which calls on us and our institutions and our system to have a tree planting along the roadsides and the road reserves. It may be very easy to forget how vital, Mr. Speaker, how vital trees are in our human life. And as many speakers have said, trees beautify our surrounding, purify our air, act as a sound barrier, produce oxygen, provide shade, and reduce pollution. So the benefits of trees are enormous, particularly in this age where when we face life-threatening effects of global warming and climate change, desertification, drought, death and destruction as a result of how we have messed up our environment and our planet. And I think when you look at the Kenyan scenario, this is an incredibly beautiful country. It provides us perhaps some of the best sceneries. I hear that Russia is beautiful, but I doubt whether there are many countries as beautiful as ours. But it is how we have treated it and how we have managed our resources that is questionable. The law of the jungle, in which construction companies have complete disregard for the basic necessities or any rules. Where road construction is done, trees are cut down, the vegetation is completely destroyed, is a culture we need to correct and bring to an end. And even in our cities now, the jungle of bricks and concrete has taken over everything. even as I was growing up in this city had more cover, more trees. I remember the jacaranda season, although jacaranda trees are not indigenous to our country, but they used to be a very beautiful part of our capital city. And unfortunately, all that is gone because there's this mad campaign or mad fight for building and making money. So I very much welcome the idea that we should turn back, reverse that process. And the idea that we should use roads to start that particular journey of planting trees is a great idea because the roads are already there, the space is already there. What it requires is the will and the political decision as well as the legislative and policies required to do so. And I think we can do it. And I also want to point out that in fact, the President has pronounced himself on the need to plant millions of trees. And I think that is a welcome decision coming from the top end of our leadership. And it can be done because in neighboring Ethiopia, the Prime Minister of that country has been spearheading a major tree planting campaign. And they have planted millions and millions of trees in a very short time. So if the will is there and we have the policies, we can do it. And I think this decision when you give a contractor a job, they're allowed to do whatever they want. They do whatever kind of destruction they can do should come to a stop. We must become a country that values its environment and a country that values the rule of law rather than the law of the jungle. And I think we can reverse the major destructive effects of climate change through tree planting, starting from the roads. And as some of the experts have said here, it is also very important to have the right trees. It just doesn't mean that we can plant every tree, and I agree with them. And also the idea of collaborating with the other players, like the research centers, the Forest Research Center, the Kenya Forest Service, is very good. I recently also suggested that we honor and remember some of the people who have played a major role in saving our environment. And one of the heroes or heroines of this particular campaign is Martha Wangari, the famous Kenyan environmentalist. And I had suggested and I had brought a motion here to Parliament to name the Karura forest after her so that we can remember the role she played in protecting that major ecosystem in our capital city, which has now become a major center of recreation and activities. So I fully support my colleague KJ's motion. I think it is timely and it's important, and I think we should push for it so that it becomes a policy and a motion that drives our policy on tree planting in this country, and particularly, as he had suggested, along the roadsides and road reserves of our country. And I think this is very, very important motion in reversing the environmental degradation that has happened in our country over the years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The President did pronounce himself on 5 billion trees in the next 5 years. Next is Honorable Paul Murigi, Igembe. Mic for Honorable Member. Give out any other mic there.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And first, I congratulate Honorable KJ for coming up with a very nice motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the entire nation and even the world, Mr. Speaker, the conversation which is in progress now, Mr. Speaker, is about climate change, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this motion is on that line, whereby the motion this motion proposes, Mr. Speaker, for the trees to be planted, Mr. Speaker, along the roadside and even along the road reserves, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, trees have or has many benefits, and when these trees, Mr. Speaker, are planted along the road or along or on the road reserves, Mr. Speaker, the trees will help a lot, Mr. Speaker, to prevent soil erosion. And also, Mr. Speaker, the trees will help on providing clean air, Mr. Speaker, which we normally breathe in, Mr. Speaker. These same trees, Mr. Speaker, will help to reduce noise, Mr. Speaker. So this motion, Mr. Speaker, or this, when we pass this motion, Mr. Speaker, for all the contractors, Mr. Speaker, to be given the mandate that whenever one is given a contract, Mr. Speaker, to do the road, Mr. Speaker, to be given a provision of implementing, Mr. Speaker, or planting trees along this road, Mr. Speaker. And not only planting trees, Mr. Speaker, but after planting these trees, they are given the mandate or the grace period of 6 months or 1 year, Mr. Speaker, to ensure those trees which they are planted, Mr. Speaker, they have already germinated well, Mr. Speaker, and even when they leave the road, Mr. Speaker, those trees can survive, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, when they will be implementing this, it will, or this process also will serve as one of the or it will provide a job for the young people, Mr. Speaker, because they are the ones who will be maintaining these trees, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion will help, or this process will help, Mr. Speaker, to increase the forest cover within this nation, Mr. Speaker, because currently most of the areas, Mr. Speaker, are suffering drought because of the deforestation. And remember, Mr. Speaker, that trees help to increase the water catchment, Mr. Speaker. And when there are no tree cover, Mr. Speaker, the areas, Mr. Speaker, tend to dry up, Mr. Speaker. So this act, Mr. Speaker, will help a lot this nation, Mr. Speaker, to progress well as far as climate is concerned, Mr. Speaker. And also, Mr. Speaker, it will help to increase the water levels, Mr. Speaker, within this nation. And when even our farmers are doing farming, Mr. Speaker, will benefit from the water, Mr. Speaker, because the trees will be able to provide this. Also, Mr. Speaker, the trees which are going to be planted along the roadside, Mr. Speaker, will help to reduce the soil sedimentation along the river banks, Mr. Speaker, and even in our dams, Mr. Speaker, which provides us with water. So, so trees will reduce that task of always dams being sedimented, or soil, Mr. Speaker, flooding over the dams, and these trees will help to reduce that, Mr. Speaker. So it is a good motion, Mr. Speaker, and I urge all the members, Mr. Speaker, to support this motion and also to pass it so that it can help our nation and also to beautify our roads. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Dagoretti North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the Honorable Kiarie for bringing this important motion when we are just completing COP27 in Egypt, where different governments have spoken and committed to see us ensuring that we start reducing the effects that we have on climate change. Mr. Speaker, trees gives us oxygen that we breathe today. And when you look at ourselves and even a country, the issue of erosions, the issue of floodings, trees protect us from that. And more importantly, when you look at the effects now of transportation, being one of the contributors, Mr. Speaker, of CO2, which is carbon monoxide, Mr. Speaker, because of the fuel usage that they use, that when you have trees within the roads, you will be able to reduce the levels of CO2 in the air, and you shall be able also to absorb that so that you're able to also use it during the photosynthesis processes that we used to learn in school. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, planting trees on the roadside is very critical. And when you look at Europe, in all their roads, you'll always find trees because they know it helps in absorbing the effects of what the cars and vehicles will put. So, Mr. Speaker, the other thing that it will create employment for our young people, because the moment you now give every young person that opportunity to have to work within those roadsides. And I've always said that when you look at our highways, Mr. Speaker, and the way we gave contractors who came in and just destroyed every tree that was there, yet in their country, for example, in China, you can never destroy that tree. They will harvest the tree the way it is, Mr. Speaker, even if it's a huge tree, and it will be replanted very well. So you even wonder, why is it that us in our country, when we were doing all these roads, our soil and everything, why couldn't we use the same system to ensure you move the trees to other places, and the trees will have survived, and today Nairobi will still be that green city we normally see. So, Mr. Speaker, the worst that we have done is to forget that while we are on the same roads and where you have planted the trees, those are the walkways, again, people will use. And you find that you can even, that's why whenever you go outside the country, you find people running on their roadsides because they have done trees, and in between we have walkways where you can use to run, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, even as we support this motion, we need now to really move ahead, be part of what now the world is going through. Mr. Speaker, when you look at what the world is doing today, people are about to make real payments in the same incentives of climate change, where governments are even now giving you opportunities. You can plant trees, and within those trees, you are able now to harvest carbon, and the government is able to give you an incentive, which is a climate change incentive, and it's happening in Canada, Mr. Speaker. It's happening in many countries. And I think that is why our president went and said, we must plant 5 billion trees, because he knows in the end it will also be an incentive to the country. And therefore, even as we move along, each of us in our constituencies, I know in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, the biggest challenge we face, that in every road reserve that we had, everyone took, they've built kiosks, they've taken it over. I think we need to take it back and start planting trees. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, just saying that For the last 2 days, I think the Honorable Carrier of Dagoretti South has brought very, very important motions in this House. And these are motions, one, they speak to our young people because we've also lost that culture of appreciating that this is nature. Wangari Maathai taught us that hummingbird. And she said, be that hummingbird. And today, Honorable Carrier, you are the hummingbird that is telling us, look, we have destroyed most of the nature that we were given. And I'm hoping when we open back Uhuru Park, we are going to find trees. We are going to find a green park, a place where our people can come, walk, rest with their families, but be able to feel nature. That we are able now to go back and appreciate nature. You find that in our informal sectors, people have completely lost touch of what is nature. And we want to go back even to vertical farming and use the small areas that they have. Vertical farming where you can plant a tree, you can plant your vegetables, but ensure you have a tree at least within where you are. So for me, I just want to say I support this motion. I know we need sustainability, and therefore we shall have to partner with the Forestry Authority so that we work together and first safeguard what we have, but then come now and look at our highways and make it a component that whenever we are doing our roads, let us plant trees. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say thank you and I support.
Honorable Wakili Muriu, are you speaking on this motion? Very well. If you are not speaking on this one, then give him the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. First of all, let me take this opportunity to commend you for being elevated to the Speaker's panel. And I'm sure we're going to get a good moment in conversing and debating in this House. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to support this motion, which has been brought by Honorable K.J. Carrier, member for Dagoretti South, because it touches on the core of humanity. I have been wondering when I look at this bill, of this motion, on why my honorable member decided to just confine the planting of trees on the highways, but subsequently I came to learn that the biggest destroyer of our environment is road developments. One of the honorable members raised a very pertinent issue about Nakuru. Whenever we used to travel to Nakuru, by the time you start seeing the beautiful purple trees, the graveria, you knew that you have landed in Nakuru. But today, those trees are no more. Mr. Speaker, sir, I come from a constituency which feeds the entire Nairobi with water. That's the Kaine water. And what today, I had a very interesting conversation with the managing director of Nairobi Water. And I told him clearly, there is no way for the last 30 years they can continue extracting water from the Kaine, but there's no activity in terms of replanting the trees to ensure that that dam can serve Nairobians and other Kenyans, including the people of Gatanga, for many years. But here we are. It should be a policy, especially in the Ministry of Roads Development, that there must be a component and a budget of replanting the trees and making sure that we have boulevards in each and every road where the contractor has put up those roads. That will enhance. Today, Kenya, we have thousands and thousands of kilometers. The previous government was saying that they have done 10,000 additional roads in this country. I wish those 10,000 kilometers were well planted with trees on both sides. The kind of vagaries of weather we're having today, the drought, the storms, the hunger, the suffering which you're going through could be mitigated. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to take this opportunity to commend Honorable KJ for this motion, and I want to support it passionately. Thank you very much.
Honorable Caleb Luyai Saboti.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to support this important motion. First and foremost, I want to extend my profound praise for your appointment to that special panel. Congratulations, and we hope you will help steer the Parliament to the right direction. Honorable KJ, Mr. Speaker, you know Honorable KJ is a scout enthusiast, just like me. And I know most of the activities of scouts are mostly, doing forest, ventures and scouting. So this could have cropped from his enthusiasm also towards afforestation. And I want to really thank him for coming up with this timely, very timely debate. We must hold a discourse around this afforestation as a way of contributing to the reduction of carbon emissions, climate change, and also desertification. Honorable Speaker, as countries are discussing, conversing around this topic, I saw a very interesting discussion of how barriers can be, barrier sites or cemeteries can be turned into, trees instead. You are buried as a tree. So that Langata Cemetery, for example, you are put into what you call a burial pod, so that eventually that pod develops into a tree. They can even label your name or something, or maybe anything that can come alongside your life. And it's a conversation that people are talking about. It's very interesting, a way of thinking and, contributing to the whole story of afforestation. I think the name they gave it is Capsula Mundi or something.
Yes, Honorable Member, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, my good friend, the Honorable Member for Saboti, is one gentleman I would not want to interrupt as he makes his contribution. However, our standing orders do require that one is factual when they are making contribution, and he was making a very salient point, and I still think he's very out of order that he's still on his feet as I am making this point of order.
Please take your seat.
Mr. Speaker, our standing orders require one to be very factual when they are making a contribution, and he was making a very salient point about how we can preserve environment by adopting a new technology of burying bodies in a pod that will grow into a tree. But while he was doing that, he kept referring to you, and he kept saying that you are buried in a pod. Now, I see two very wrong factual issues on that. One is the fact that you are very alive, and secondly, the fact that we never bury life. The moment life is extracted from this human body, what we bury is a body. We can never bury a human person. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to be informed whether this particular member was in order to keep referring to your burial, especially knowing the cultures from where you come, Mr. Speaker, that we don't wish people to be gone that soon. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kiare. Speaker shall not be discussed as being buried. You may proceed.
I think I choose to ignore that, Speaker, honestly. That is totally out of my conversation. I was very clear that this is a conversation, I've seen it around in social media, how people, intend to bury their loved ones in future in a biodegradable burial pod.
Could you put the microphone for Honorable Kiari off?
Yeah. So